Chapter 2277. I'll send a 4,000-word chapter first. There'll be another chapter tonight. The starry sky was in chaos, but the world where Lin Sun was unaffected. He turned into a furnace and suppressed the decree lightning tribulation. His state of mind and will were still. The appearance of the great figure made him completely fearless, neither sad nor happy. After paying such a price and waiting for so long, Master finally made his move. In the dark world, Zhong Qiu, who was proud to the core, was excited at this moment. His eyes were full of joy. She was stunned. Only now did he realize who Zhong Qiu was talking about, and he couldn't help but be visibly moved. Your master predicted all of this? Zhong Qiu shook his head. This is an unpredictable opportunity. If youngest junior brother did not seize this opportunity with his cultivation, the price master paid back then would have been for nothing. What price? She couldn't help asking. Zhong Qiu didn't answer. Because even he didn't know. He only knew that master had left since then. No one knew where he went. She was silent for a moment. So, this opportunity is destined to belong to Lin Sun? Zhong Qiu shook his head. No one can say until the last moment. Boom! The eternal light of the Tao rumbled. The enormous axe was shaken to the point of droning and trembling, and the robust figure that held the axe staggered back. Every single step he took caused space to shatter apart. At the same time, the great figure standing on the waves of the river of time said indifferently, if it was the real sky-splitting axe, there would still be a chance to struggle. But with just its will, it's like throwing an egg against a stone. This great figure was the master of the square inch. In the distance, the 3 men and 1 woman frowned. Their eyes flashed, and their aura was terrifying. The appearance of the master of the square inch surprised them. At this time, the emperors in the distance were scared to death. The giant axe was surrounded by the immortal light of Tao. Who could believe that it was just the will of a treasure? Who were they? Where did they come from? Which era did they belong to? Everyone could only be sure that they didn't belong to the starry ancient path, because they rushed out of the vortex of time. This seemed to prove that they weren't afraid of the impact of the law of time. This was too shocking, exceeding one's imagination. On the path of the Emperor realm, time reigned supreme. Who wouldn't fear the corrosion of time? Even the Emperor ancestor had only begun to touch and comprehend the passage of time before he had the power to pry into the secrets of ancestral atavism. Even the Emperor ancestor couldn't be unafraid of the order of time. This was like a myth among myths. And now, all of them had witnessed such an eternal miracle. Striking a rock with an egg? No, aren't you also a Tao body of will? It's just that I didn't expect that such a low-level spacetime plane would have someone like you. The valiant man in the lead who wielded a spear spoke. His voice rumbled like the galloping of a magnificent army, and it surged through the starry sky. The eternal glow of the Tao coiled around him, and it made him seem like a supreme god. A low-level spacetime realm. The hearts of those Emperor Realm old monsters were greatly shaken, unable to calm down. How vast was the starry skies! Yet they were viewed as inferior by others. A frog in a well. Minuscule mountains spoke indifferently. The place you came from is indeed extraordinary. But since time immemorial, how many people have stepped onto the path of the undying Supreme? While they were exchanging words, they didn't seem to be fighting. But in reality, every single move and word of figures like them was filled with boundless terrifying might. If it was anyone else, that person's soul would have been shaken and subdued by their words a long time ago. Let me test your abilities. A skinny black-robed man walked out. The sword in his hand swept out, and immortal sword energy filled the sky. Before this sword even slashed out, the Emperor Realm figures in the distance already couldn't open their eyes. They felt as if their bodies and minds were being sliced by a sharp divine sword. They felt a fatal terror. Without hesitation, they retreated. They were like a group of frightened stray dogs, retreating to the great wall. Bang! The sword energy that could tear apart the heavens slashed down. It was as if it could surpass time, and all things were reversed under this sword. It was terrifying to the extreme. The starry sky seemed like it was about to collapse. Ghosts wept and gods howled, and the river of time surged. There's a price to pay for testing. Above the river of time, the imposing figure of the master of the heart core suddenly shone. It was countless times more dazzling than the stars and moon in the sky. An unparalleled power rushed out, enough to suppress the past and present. The sword energy was suppressed by this power and stopped in midair. It struggled violently, but it couldn't slash down. The pupils of the skinny black-robed man shrank. Without hesitation, he mobilized all the power in his body, and the immortal sword energy surged again. At this moment, the master of the heart core waved his sleeve. In the river of time, a wave emerged and condensed into a strange character. It was vaguely visible that it was the character for fighting. In an instant, the character pierced through time and space and shattered the brilliant sword energy. Bang! The chest of the skinny black-robed man was pierced through, and he was sent flying. His immortal aura tumbled violently, showing signs of collapsing. Damn it! If my avatar was here, I wouldn't have been injured by this kind of power. The skinny black-robed man's voice was filled with rage. The wounds on his body were gone, but his injuries were still there. That little guy is about to pass the tribulation. We can't delay any longer, said a woman. She wore a robe whiter than snow, and her temperament was fierce. She was like an unsheathed divine sword that pressed down on people's souls. Her eyes burst with light as if all living beings in the world had ascended to immortality. The rain of light was so vast that it flooded the sky. A golden halberd surrounded by immortal aura was under her control, and it added an unparalleled murderous aura. She sensed that Lin Sun's power was showing signs of completely suppressing and refining the decree tribulation lightning. Let's do it together, the burly figure with the giant axe said in a thunderous voice. His murderous aura shot up to the sky and earth. He had the power to conquer the world. You should have done this a long time ago, the black-robed man with the sword said coldly. They all looked at the leader of the group. The handsome man surrounded by immortal aura looked at the master of the heart core. This time, it's not just the four of us. It's pointless for you to stay here, he said indifferently. His voice was indifferent. If you leave now, you can still keep this Will Dao body. Otherwise, it won't just be you. This starry sky, this world, everything will be destroyed. The Emperor Realm cultivators hiding on the Great Wall paled at those words. Threatening to destroy the universe. The meaning behind those words was shocking. The master of the heart core seemed unmoved. His voice was faint and indifferent as before. The myriad transformation spear, the heaven-splitting axe, the god-slaying sword, and the halberd of annihilation. Each of these four treasures represents a clan. Now that I've recognized them, I'll pay them a visit one day. The 3 men and 1 woman narrowed their eyes. This was a threat. The most unbelievable thing was that the master of the heart core had seen through their background, but they didn't know who he was. You're right. We don't have time to waste. The master of the heart core walked out from the river of time. His figure was imposing, as if he was outside the 9 heavens. His aura changed along with it. Every move he made seemed to be able to look down on the ages and ask who in the world could be his match. Stubborn fools. The valiant man sighed. Almost immediately, he and the other 2 men attacked. Boom. Immortal light swirled around him. He held the spear and looked like a god of war from ancient myth. His murderous intent shattered the starry sky and erupted with a peerless aura. Even the Emperor Realm cultivators hiding far away on the Great Wall felt despair. He was too strong, so strong that they couldn't even fathom him. And this was merely the power of the body of Tao. Just thinking about it was enough to make them collapse. Slash. The black-robed man's sword, the white-robed woman's halberd, and the burly man's axe all attacked at the same time. For a moment, light surged, time surged, immortal energy surged, and terrifying murderous intent filled every inch of space. From afar, it was as if the immortal gods had descended to the mortal world to wage war. The master of the heart core took a step forward. With each step, heaven and earth turned upside down and time reversed. Ancient and cryptic characters appeared one after another. Burn, slaughter, destroy, slash, seal, every character seemed to be made of immortal gold. They shone brilliantly and surged out of the river of time like the manifestation of an ancient great Tao. An immeasurable aura filled the air. The master of the heart core seemed to have emerged from the ancient past. He was indomitable and invincible. Rumble. He took a step forward. Every step he took changed the world. Immortal gold characters flowed and bloomed with unparalleled power. It was as if a world was being destroyed. The terrifying torrent of power crushed the attacks of the 3 men and 1 woman, and they were forced to retreat. Their expressions finally changed. Their expressions of supremacy vanished, and it was replaced by a wisp of surprise and bewilderment. Who exactly is this person? Go. The master of the heart core flicked his finger. A dazzling character dragged a rain of light toward the black-robed man. Bang! The sword in the black-robed man's hand was shattered. His entire body was instantly torn apart as if he was being executed by 1,000 cuts. His body was formed from his will. Even though it was shattered, he was able to repair it immediately. However, he had underestimated the power of this attack. The power of the character drowned out his shattered will and crushed it inch by inch. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into thin air. 1 man and 1 sword, filled with immortal power, were killed by a single character. That scene was enough to shock the world. Everyone else was terrified, their expressions changing. No one expected that after risking their cultivation to project their will and Tao bodies into this low-level world, they would actually encounter such a terrifying opponent. This was beyond their expectations and caught them off guard. Go. The master of the heart core flicked his finger again. A burn character whistled out. It was like a flame that ignited the starry sky. It had the power to incinerate all things and refine all Tao. Bang! The burly man's giant axe was burned into liquid. Then, it evaporated into a mist of light and disappeared. His entire body was set ablaze. His burly figure was covered in surging flames that illuminated the starry sky in a dazzling manner. No. The burly man let out a roar of pain, unwillingness, and anger. It was like the struggle of a god before his death. In the blink of an eye, he was reduced to ashes. Another person was killed in the blink of an eye. The master of the heart core didn't stop moving forward. Before, he stood above the river of time. His figure was imposing like a mountain, calm like water, and he didn't exude any killing intent. But now, as he stepped out from the river of time, he was like an invincible god that could suppress all gods. A sovereign was reduced to ashes with a flick of his finger. Let's go. The remaining man and woman turned around without hesitation. They tore open a whirlpool passageway and tried to escape. The master of the heart core's power was beyond their expectations. They felt a chill in their hearts. They didn't dare hesitate. Otherwise, their will and Daos would be erased. I've come to see you two off. As the master of the heart core spoke, he sent out a seal character. The whirlpool passageway in the distance was immediately sealed and stopped moving. The man and woman's expressions changed. They turned around and tried to fight back. Their vision was filled with the destroy and slash characters that seemed to be forged from immortal gold. Bang! Bang! The valiant man's body was destroyed as if he had been erased. Even the spear in his hand disappeared like a piece of paper. At the same time, the woman was killed. Her picturesque figure was separated in the middle and disappeared with a bang. At the same time, the master of the heart core stopped. His hands were hidden in his sleeve. His figure was imposing, and a boundless might radiated from him. Kill, burn, seal, destroy, and slash. Just 5 ancient characters killed 4 immortal figures from another space-time world and sealed a passageway of time. That kind of power, that kind of invincibility, crushed everything in its path. The martial emperors on the Great Wall didn't get a clear look at the battle. A battle of this level wasn't something they could observe. However, they were still shaken and stupefied. In the blink of an eye, the 3 men and 1 woman disappeared from the starry sky. The only thing left was that imposing figure with a majestic demeanor. Who was he? Everyone was dumbfounded. All of this had defied all of their imaginations. Even though he was a great emperor, they realized that they were insignificant and ignorant in front of a figure of this level. Xiaji saw all of this. She, too, couldn't see what was going on. But she wasn't very shocked. There was only one thought in her mind that couldn't be suppressed. If she had such power, who would dare to bully Lin Sun in the future? She looked up at Lin Sun. At the same time, the Master of the Heart Core also looked at Lin Sun. The tribulation cloud rolled. Lin Sun's body, which had turned into a furnace, was almost illusory and blurry. It seemed like it would collapse at any moment. But at the same time, the decree tribulation thunder he had suppressed was also showing signs of collapsing. It seemed like it couldn't hold on any longer. Xia Ji's heart clenched again. She held her breath and couldn't look away anymore. The Master of the Heart Core reached out a hand. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Under the tribulation cloud, beams of light shot out one after another. They turned into the Tower of Endless Way, the 3,000 floating and sinking, and the slanting moon and 3 stars. The Master of the Heart Core held a horsetail whisk in one hand. The Tower of Endless Way hung over his head. The slanting moon and 3 stars rotated under his feet. His aura changed again. Earlier, he was mighty and supreme, yet at this moment, he seemed like the Lord of creation that sat high above the 9 heavens and looked down upon the ages. Chapter 2278. The river of time flowed. The Master of the Heart Core stood above it. The waves rolled, but they couldn't shake his majestic figure. At this moment, the Tower of Endless End was emitting a completely different aura. It had 9 floors and looked like it was made of glazed gold. It was suffused with the energy of the universe. The heavily damaged 3,000 floating and sinking swords floated on the Master of the Core Mind's left arm like a dreamy rain of white light. Under his feet, the slanting moon and 3 stars pattern was like a futon. From a distance, the Master of the Heart Core seemed to be above the 9 heavens. He was so lofty and ethereal that people could only look up to him. Back then, I made you suffer with me. But fortunately, as long as I succeed today, it will all be worth it. The Master of the Heart Core stroked the 3,000 floating sinks with a hint of emotion in his eyes. At the beginning of the primeval age, he had paid a great price to deduce the nirvana of freedom, a world formed by the power of the starry sky. No one knew that it was also at that time that the Tower of Endless End and the 3,000 floating sinks were damaged. This little guy has collected a lot of treasures over the years. Soon, the Master of the Heart Core noticed that there were many divine materials, treasures, and precious medicines in the Tower of Endless End. There were even many Kunlun monarch weapons. The insignificance Bao is involved in this cause and effect. Well, let him be. The Master of the Heart Core's eyes were as deep as the starry sky. In his eyes, there were scenes of the evolution of the heavens and the changes of the past and present. This broken blade is interesting. It doesn't seem to belong to this world. But its power is too damaged. Repairing it is like mending the sky. The remains of the refining mother furnace. No wonder he could collect so many Kunlun monarch weapons. It is very likely that this young man will return to Kunlun in the future. This bronze block has a Taoist riding an ox. It seems that it was left by the old Taoist who once went to the ruins of wonders. As the Master of the Heart Core examined them one by one, Wu Kei, who was dormant in the insignificance Bao, and the weapon spirit in the broken blade all trembled. In the silence, they felt an irresistible and terrifying aura. Fortunately, this aura didn't have any killing intent. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to resist it at all. He's here. A mysterious light flashed in the Master of the Core Stone's eyes. Boom! The depths of the starry sky seemed as if it had sunk, and a spatial abyss had collapsed there while the violent energy of the laws rumbled and emanated peerless might. Following that, a figure walked out from the abyss. He was thin, ramrod straight, and tall. Crack! Crack! As this figure appeared, the starry sky trembled, as if it was on the verge of shattering. The power of the great path collapsed and fell into chaos. At this moment, it was like a god from another dimension had descended here, and merely the aura he emanated was something that even the starry sky was unable to endure. The seemingly endless great wall began to shake violently. Cracks spread out like spiderwebs on the ancient, mottled walls. One castle after another swayed, as if they were on the verge of collapse. The great emperors hiding within were so shocked that their souls almost jumped out of their bodies. They immediately fled further away. That was the direction of the nirvanic freedom heaven. At the very beginning, they had been transported from that barren land to the Great Wall that stretched across the starry sky. After the Great Wall lost the power of order, they finally had a chance to return. No one dared to stay any longer. The scene from before was too terrifying, and it crushed the last trace of reason in their hearts. If they dared to stay any longer, they would definitely suffer an unexpected calamity. Dong! A figure walked out from the depths of the starry sky. Every step he took caused the nearby space to collapse and the laws of the great path to shatter. His figure was thin, ramrod straight, and covered in extremely dazzling and gorgeous divine radiance. It transformed into circles of light that illuminated the scene in the sky. But upon closer inspection, he had the appearance of a young man. He had delicate features, wore black clothes, and his long hair hung loosely on his shoulders. A wine gourd was tied to a red string that hung at his waist. Only his eyes emanated an aura of age when they moved. Alas, the order of this world is too fragile. It's like a fragile tile. If I didn't have to come here this time, I would rather not come here for the rest of my life. The young man shook his head and sighed. He walked carefully as if he was treading on thin ice, as if he was deeply afraid that he would accidentally shatter this vast starry sky. "You're too late." The Master of the Core Stone spoke indifferently, and a mysterious light flowed in his eyes. The young man was startled, and he looked up at the tribulation clouds. But right when the young man looked over, the Master of the Core Stone flicked his sleeve. Crack! A terrifying collision occurred in the void, and divine radiance exploded. The young man stopped and smiled bitterly. "You can't even let me take a look?" The Master of the Core Stone said, "It's fine to take a normal look, but your gaze can kill." The young man had a solemn expression. "All right, I'll close my eyes and take a look." As expected, he closed his eyes. Boom! The Master of the Core Stone didn't move, but the 3,000 ups and downs swept out, and it created a snow-white stream of light that transformed into an incomparably magnificent Tao diagram. It slowly circulated in the void, and the starry sky seemed to be affected by it, causing it to distort and tremble. A formless will charged over, but it was blocked by the Tao diagram. As the Tao diagram revolved, the formless will was obliterated inch by inch. The young man opened his eyes and said with exasperation, "Fellow cultivator, aren't you being too petty?" He was like a real young man, showing all his emotions on the outside, and his words didn't seem shrewd at all. But the Master of the Core Stone knew that the 3 men and 1 woman combined were far less of a threat than this young man. The Master of the Core Stone pointed at the slowly revolving Tao diagram. "I'm only at ease with this blocking." "Fine, you're not bad." The young man curled his lips. Under the tribulation clouds, Lin Sun's figure was completely blurred, almost transparent. However, The power of the decree tribulation lightning was also on the verge of collapse. When the young man looked over, he saw the decree tribulation lightning being completely suppressed and refined by Lin Sun. He was stunned at first, then he cried out, I'm really late? He couldn't believe it and his eyes widened. Boom! The Tao diagram revolved, blooming with obscure light, and shook violently. It was obvious that it had suffered a terrible impact. Before the master of the core stone could react, the young man waved his hand. Don't block it, don't block it. I'm just looking, really. The tribulation clouds rolled, and Lin Sun's almost illusory figure was shrouded in layers of crystal-clear light. Visible to the naked eye, he seemed to be undergoing a true nirvana. In the interweaving light rain, his figure gradually condensed. Boom! Endless thunder and lightning flowed, and billions of rays of light fell from his body. Then, his aura began to grow stronger and stronger. In the end, his figure became more and more solid, and the pores all over his body gushed out magnificent light rain. An indescribably supreme aura spread out from his body, causing the entire space to be dyed with a divine and brilliant aura. Then, like the sounds of nature, the sound drifted through the starry sky, like the praise of the gods. Witnessing this scene, the young man's expression became uncertain. Sometimes he gritted his teeth, sometimes he frowned, and sometimes he stroked his chin. After a while, he said dejectedly, I'm really a step late. At this moment, Lin Sun, who was bathed in the dazzling divine light, opened his eyes. His eyes were like a pair of big abysses emerging, trying to swallow the starry sky. He took a deep breath, and the aura of disaster in the world was swallowed by his body like rivers flowing into the sea. The tall figure emanated a supreme pressure that belonged solely to an Emperor realm expert. A long time ago, there was a sage who described the demeanor of the great emperor with 16 words. Look up high, drill hard, look ahead, and suddenly look behind. The more you look up, the higher you feel. The harder you study, the thicker you feel. You want to catch up, but you can't catch up with him no matter how hard you try. This was the meaning of the 16 words, and also the weight carried by the word Emperor realm. Emperors looked up to the heavens, controlled the universe, and stood high above all living beings. Now, Lin Sun had experienced an unprecedented great tribulation, and finally broke through the realm and set foot on his own road to the Emperor realm. From this moment on, he was a real emperor, a peerless one. When he saw this scene, the young man smiled bitterly and hung his head dejectedly. But the master of the heart core laughed. It was a kind of relief and gratification of getting what he wanted. It was a lotus that he had been waiting for thousands of years. Looking at Lin Sun, who seemed to have been reborn, Xia Ji, who had been tense all the time, suddenly felt a kind of indescribable joy and joy. 2 streams of tears flowed from her eyes that were as clear as the stars. An unprecedented great tribulation, 9 rounds of life and death, hardships, turbulence and dangers. She saw it all with her own eyes, and her heart also went through all kinds of suffering and torment. But now Lin Sun finally succeeded, which made her finally loosen the tight shackles in her heart, and she felt unprecedented joy. This kind of emotional ups and downs was something she had never experienced before. The fortune of life was nothing more than a false alarm. Lin Sun didn't have time to experience this new realm, this new power. He first smiled at Xia Ji in the distance, then turned around and bowed. Disciple Lin Sun pays respect to master. The 8 words resounded in the universe, full of gratitude and respect. He knew very well that without master's help, it would have been difficult for him to become a great emperor, let alone obtain the great fortune related to the immortal supreme. How fortunate it is to have such a disciple. In the future, your achievements will definitely surpass mine. The master of the heart core smiled. This was the highest form of recognition. At least, if Zhong Qiu were here, he would be surprised, because none of the other descendants of Mount Heart Core, including him, had ever received such praise. "Hey, hey, hey, have you forgotten that I haven't left yet?" In the distance, the young man shouted in exasperation. "What's more, so what if I set foot on this path? It's still too early to be invincible." Chapter 2279. The young man was very angry. He stomped his foot and a large part of the starry sky collapsed like a broken roof. But his body swayed as if he couldn't stand still. He became angry again. "This place is as fragile as a carrot." Then he looked at Lin Sun with a bright smile. "Little guy, what do you think of my combat ability?" "Very strong," Lin Sun said calmly. The young man said proudly, "Then do you want to consider coming with me? No matter which space-time plane you are in, there are only a few people who can teach you how to reach the peak of immortality and become a master." He pointed at himself, "And I am one of them." His voice was full of arrogance. Lin Sun was startled, and his eyes were strange. This young man was obviously an old man who had lived for many years, but his every move was full of the temperament of a young man. He was unruly and unrestrained, without the slightest dignity or posture. He gave off a very indecent feeling. The master of the square inch suddenly said, "Your state of mind has fallen to the state when you were young. You must have encountered a great tribulation on your path. If you continue like this, your state of mind will continue to fall. If you are willing, I am willing to take you as my disciple and teach you the way to repair your state of mind." "You?" The young man was stunned, and then he laughed angrily. "You want to take me as your disciple? With your eyesight, could it be that you still don't know who I am?" He thought it was ridiculous. Before the master of the square inch could speak, he patted the gourd on his waist and chanted, "With the swallowing gourd on my waist, I walked on the path of Tao. I went through 18 tribulations in my life, and I achieved immortality in my life. I will never change my name or my surname. My Taoist name is Kongjuit. Unprecedented and unparalleled, only I can do it." Then he took off the gourd on his waist, untied the red string on the mouth of the gourd, and drank happily. The master of the square inch said, "But your state of mind is really unstable. If you don't fix it, you will be as naive as a child. Can you stand it then?" The young man was stunned. He put away the gourd and said angrily, "Cut the crap. I want to take this man away. Do you agree?" The master of the square inch smiled and shook his head. The young man took a deep breath and said, "I will only throw one punch." The master of the heart core frowned. "Is there a need to do this? Do you accept or not?" the youth shouted. The master of the heart core said, "If you are willing to be my disciple, I will even take a punch from you, let alone this one." The youth's handsome face flushed red, and he seemed to be extremely furious as he punched out. One punch. The entire expanse of the starry sky was like a pool of spring water, and it was thrown into disorder, crushed, and collapsed by this punch. Rumbling resounded like a tsunami, and it surged through the world. The master of the heart core took a deep breath and punched out as well. As soon as he punched out, the starry sky was suffused with an aura of peace and tranquility. It was like a spring breeze that silently nourished everything. Bang! The force of the young man's punch was like a hot knife through butter. It was as if it was made of the great path itself, and it struck the core lord. The core lord staggered backward, and his aura began to dissipate. "Master!" Lin Sun's pupils shrank. The master of the heart core waved a hand. "It's fine." His figure was on the verge of collapse, and his aura was in disorder. He was like a cracked porcelain that could shatter at any moment. In the distance, the young man was also taken aback. He said, "What kind of bullshit punch is that?" The master of the heart core smiled. "This part of the starry sky cannot be destroyed just like that." As his voice trailed off, the chaotic, crushed, and collapsed starry sky suddenly returned to its previous calm and stability. The void was filled with a peaceful atmosphere. The young man understood that the master of the heart core's punch was not meant to compete with him, but to protect this part of the starry sky from being destroyed. But the young man was still angry. You are a joke. What does the collapse of the starry sky have to do with you? Are you worried that this space-time world will be affected? Oh, you really have a merciful heart. His voice was full of sarcasm and sarcasm. The master of the heart core said, I took a punch from you. Now, are you willing to be my disciple? The young man was exasperated. He pointed at the master of the heart core and said, You rotten old man, you are very evil. With that, he turned around and left. Lin Sun was surprised. Did he give up just like that? The master of the heart core smiled. Kongju, when you are no longer obsessed, you will be enlightened. I will wait for you to come back. Come back? I don't want to go back to this godforsaken place. Don't worry about me. One day that kid will definitely leave. The young man did not look back. His slim figure stepped on the starry sky and went further and further away. In the end, accompanied by a rumbling sound, his entire body vanished completely. Watching him leave, the master of the heart core let out a long sigh. At this moment, Lin Sun clearly felt that the master seemed to be a little reluctant to see the young man leave. Even his emotions were a little sad. This surprised him. At this moment, the master of the heart core said, His Taoist name is Kongju. He was the first person to go to the other side of the starry sky at the beginning of the primitive times. He was regarded as a leader by his peers at the time. His talent was extraordinary and unparalleled. Lin Sun finally realized that the young man was a peerless figure from the ancient path of the starry sky. Kongju is just like his name. He seeks an unprecedented path towards the Tao. However, he's too prejudiced. After he overcame the tribulation of eternity, he thought that he'd already transcended the grand Tao and could truly enjoy great eternity and freedom. The master of the heart core said with a complicated tone, because of his stubbornness, his state of mind has encountered an unpredictable tribulation. If this tribulation is not broken, his state of mind will continue to fall. Although he has the attainments, his temperament, experience, and memory will continue to decline until they return to the beginning. It's like a wise old man's state of mind and experience have returned to his teenage years overnight. However, his cultivation won't disappear, and that's undoubtedly the most dangerous thing. You can imagine, how dangerous would it be for a child who doesn't have enough experience and whose temperament is like a blank piece of paper to possess strength even greater than the imperial ancestor. Hearing this, Lin Sun was shocked. This was indeed incredible. A tribulation of the heart could make a supreme figure's state of mind, experience, and wisdom fall to the beginning. Then, how could he control his original attainments? If he did evil, all the heavens would suffer. The most terrifying thing was that the loss of memory and wisdom would make him unable to recognize his family. It was also at this time that Lin Sun finally understood why Kongju showed the mentality of a young man. It was not an act, but his state of mind had suffered a tribulation. But fortunately, he still remembers the way back. The master of the heart core said softly. Speaking of this, he smiled and looked at Lin Sun. You must be wondering why I know this person so well and why I took a punch from him. Lin Sun nodded. He was indeed puzzled. Because a long time ago, Kongju and I were on the path of cultivation together. We can be called the best friends on the path of cultivation. The master of the heart core said in a low voice. In other words, you and the other senior brothers and sisters can all call him Martial Uncle. Martial Uncle. Lin Sun felt shocked and almost couldn't believe it. Kongju. That playful youngster was nominally the martial uncle of the successors of Mount Fangsuan? This answer caught Lin Sun off guard. I thought it would be someone else who came to stop you. I didn't expect it to be Kongju. The master of Mount Heart Core took a deep breath, and his eyes were filled with mysterious light. Fortunately, although Kongju has long forgotten who I am, there is still a trace of stubbornness in his nature. That's why he gave up like this. Otherwise, today's tribulation will be difficult to resolve. Lin Sun couldn't help but ask, Master, why don't you recognize him? The Master of the Heart Core said, The young Kongju didn't know who I am. Lin Sun suddenly understood, and he was even more horrified. A supreme figure encountered a strange mental tribulation, but his memory and state of mind returned to when he was young. Just thinking about it made people feel cold. Suddenly, Lin Sun realized a problem and said, His memory, cognition, and state of mind have all fallen to when he was young. Could it be that he was used by someone to come here this time? The Master of the Heart Core nodded. I wouldn't say that he was being used, but he must have been bewitched. Kongju is most obsessed with the Tao of immortal paragons. If someone told him that such a Tao path would appear in the starry sky, he would have come regardless of the cost. Lin Sun's expression was uncertain. These things were completely beyond his understanding. He could only be sure that whether it was Kongju or the 3 men and 1 woman who appeared before, they all came from the other side of the starry sky. Crack, crack. A cracking sound came from the Master of the Heart Core. Lin Sun looked up and was shocked. The Master of the Heart Core's majestic figure cracked into pieces and turned into a rain of light that peeled off and drifted away, disappearing on the river of time. Master, did Kongju's punch hurt you? Lin Sun's heart trembled, and his body exuded an unparalleled Emperor Realm aura. Don't worry. This is a Taoist body of my willpower. It has been worn down by the river of time for thousands of years. It can't hold on any longer. The Master of the Heart Core's tone was calm. Even if it wasn't for Kongju's punch, this Taoist body of my willpower would have been destroyed after what happened today. But you, as he spoke, he stared at Lin Sun, from today onwards, you are an Emperor Realm Ju. Moreover, you possess the unprecedented foundation of the immortal supreme way. In the future, don't be arrogant because of this. Lin Sun's emotions fluctuated. If it wasn't for Master's protection today, I wouldn't have been able to have my current achievements. In the future, I won't dare to disobey Master's teachings. The Master of the Heart Core laughed. Our mountain of heart and mind teaches without discrimination. It's enough as long as you act with a clear conscience. After a pause, he pointed to the depths of the starry sky. If one day you go to the other side of the starry sky, can you promise me one thing? Lin Sun agreed without hesitation, yes. The Master of the Heart Core was speechless, agreeing without asking what it is. Kid, you're too obedient. This is not good. Your eldest senior brother and second senior brother are not obedient people. The Master of the Heart Core's voice was filled with kindness and gratification, as if he was thinking of the descendants of Mountain of Heart and Mind. Chapter 2280. If you have a chance, bring Kongju back. No matter what, he is the pioneer of this starry sky, and also your martial uncle. This was the Master of the Heart Core's request. Lin Sun agreed without hesitation, but before I bring him back, I have to beat him up. The figure of the Master of the Heart Core was being destroyed and was about to disappear. Even if it was only a matter of time, Kongju's punch had undoubtedly sped it up. The Master of the Heart Core laughed. In terms of revenge, you and Jun Huan are similar. His figure became more and more blurred, as if it would disappear at any time. However, he didn't seem to care and said, Lin Sun, you are my youngest disciple. Do you have a Taoist name? Tao Abyss, Lin Sun replied. The Great Way is like an abyss, infinite and boundless. You have the talent of devouring abyss, so this Taoist name is quite fitting. As the Master of the Heart Core spoke, his figure turned into a handful of light rain and disappeared. Master! Lin Sun's eyes were red, and his heart was filled with unspeakable reluctance. Let's go. Your road to becoming a great emperor has just begun. We will meet again someday. The gentle voice of the Master of the Heart Core resounded, and then disappeared completely. Even the surging river of time had silently vanished along with it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The Tower of Tao without end, the 3,000 ups and downs, and the diagrams of the moon and 3 stars turned into flowing lights and fell into Lin Sun's palm. Looking at the empty and cold starry sky, Lin Sun suddenly felt an indescribable sense of loss. On this path of the Grand Tao, time was long. Who knew when they would meet again after many years? After a long time, Lin Sun withdrew his gaze. "Master, I will do what I promised you," Lin Sun said in his heart. In the 7th year of the opening of Nirvana, Lin Sun went through a lot of killing and triggered an unprecedented divine tribulation. After 9 rounds of life and death, Lin Sun achieved Nirvana in the midst of destruction, proved his Tao between life and death, and obtained the foundation of the Immortal Supreme. Too many things happened on this day. It was dangerous, chaotic, and soul-stirring. But all of this was not over yet. The Great Wall stretched endlessly across the starry sky. However, compared to the past, it lacked the power that belonged to the starry sky's origin order. On the castle, Summer Solstice stood alone with her clothes fluttering in the wind. The white bone spear in her hand was glowing with dreamy silver starlight. Looking at Lin Sun coming from afar, she seemed a little nervous, which was rare for her. Lin Sun laughed from the bottom of his heart. He stepped forward and held Xia Ji tightly in his arms without saying anything. No words could describe his feelings at this moment. Xia Ji's body was a little tight at first, but gradually became soft. She nestled quietly in Lin Sun's arms and rested her head on his shoulder. In their minds, the two of them could not help but recall some things from the past. When they were young in Feiyun village, they depended on each other for survival. Their days were peaceful and fulfilling. In Xiao Empire, they walked on different paths. He was a direct descendant of the Lin family and shouldered a blood feud. He had experienced many storms and risen to power with great difficulty. She entered the Dark Night Sacred Hall to cultivate. Later, they entered the ancient Desolation Realm. One traveled the world, while the other cultivated in silence. Later, they parted at the shore of the Star Chest Sea. One went to the Last Day's Impasse and fought alone until now. The other went to the Kunlun ruins and traveled the starry sky. The scenes of the past flashed in their hearts like a clear imprint, stirring up emotional fluctuations like ripples. They were dense and intertwined, reverberating in their hearts. After a while, Xia Ji suddenly said, "Lin Sun, I'm hungry." Lin Sun was stunned for a moment and immediately laughed. He still remembered that the words, "I'm hungry," were Xia Ji's mantra in the past. She was so direct every time. "This time, I must feed you." Lin Sun sensed that after losing the power of order, the restrictions on the Great Wall were no longer there, and he could use all the treasures he had. It should be known that over the years, his Tower of Terminus had stored countless treasures, including many delicacies and exotic fruits from all over the starry sky. After returning to the castle, Lin Sun took out all these delicacies and introduced them to Xia Ji one by one. "This is deer fruit. It's shaped like a deer, and it's fragrant and sweet. It's the most appetizing. I bought it from a cultivator from the mountain deer world when I traveled to the primordial world on the boat. And this, doesn't it look like a bunch of golden grapes? It's called golden light grape. Its meat is lustrous and its juice is sweet. Try these first." Lin Sun prepared a large pile of various precious spiritual fruits in one go, and then he started to prepare other ingredients. There were all sorts of strange seasonings and all sorts of beast meat. There were all sorts of things that flew in the sky, ran on the ground, and swam in the water. All these years, he'd traveled through the starry sky and the mountains and rivers all along the way. He'd gone to countless cities in the 49 prefectures of the primordial world, and he'd collected countless rare goods along the way. Some were produced in the primordial world, and some came from other galaxies and worlds in the starry sky. There was a huge variety of them, and it was a dazzling lineup. After preparing the ingredients, Lin Sun took out a cauldron as a rice pot, dozens of flying swords skewered meat, and an emperor's saber cut vegetables. Looking at Lin Sun's busy figure, Xia Ji opened her eyes wide and said, Lin Sun, what have you been doing all these years? A chef? If I were a chef, I would only cook for you, Lin Sun laughed. Then he patted his head and remembered something. The next moment, the 5 doppelgangers rushed out together and began to work separately. Lin Sun was satisfied. It was too slow for one person to cook so much food. The front of the huge castle had become Lin Sun's kitchen. It didn't take long for the fragrance of food to fill the air. Nirvana of freedom. On that vast and boundless wasteland. It's over, it's finally over. An old monster breathed a long sigh of relief. Looking up at the sky from here, one could only see the great wall winding across the starry sky like a long dragon. The starry sky farther away could not be seen. But all the old monsters knew that the battle in the depths of the starry sky should have ended. They just didn't know the final result. Previously, the starry sky looked like it was about to collapse. But now, it has returned to normal. It seems that the terrifying figure from the other side of the starry sky has already won and left. Someone muttered. One? That's not necessarily true. The one who appeared on the river of time is most likely the willpower body left behind by the master of Mount Fangsuan. The 3 men and 1 woman were all easily killed by him. Some people were still fearful. The others were also discussing in low voices. Their faces were filled with shock and uncertainty. They were martial emperors, but they were not strong enough before. They could only escape early for fear of being implicated. Thinking of the terrifying battle in the starry sky, they still couldn't calm down and were shaken. I'm only concerned about whether the remnant of Mount Fangsuan is dead or alive, and whether he succeeded in becoming a martial emperor. An old monster's expression was gloomy. No matter who it was, the moment they thought of Lin Sun, they felt as if they had swallowed a fly. The army of alien beasts was huge, but they couldn't kill him. How terrifying was that great calamity, but they still couldn't kill him. Until the terrifying figure from the other side of the starry sky appeared, but was suddenly blocked by the master of the heart core. How could they accept that? If he's still alive, he must have stepped into the martial emperor realm, and he would be a supreme martial emperor. Think about it. He was able to kill alien beasts comparable to a 3rd-level martial emperor when he was only a supreme quasi-emperor. One can imagine how terrifying his combat strength will be when he becomes a martial emperor. Someone analyzed calmly. In other words, even though he's just stepped foot into the emperor realm and only possesses a cultivation at the 1st level, he can't be judged by convention. According to this kid's nature, he'll definitely take revenge on us. These words caused the hearts of all the old freaks present here to feel extremely heavy. If that was really the case, then Lin Sun was the only supreme martial emperor who had become a supreme martial emperor in the last 100,000 years since the end of the Tao War. Based on his extraordinary combat strength when he was at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm, his combat strength was destined to be far beyond that of ordinary martial emperors after he stepped into the martial emperor realm. This made the old monsters in the 4th and 5th level martial emperor realm afraid to underestimate him. In short, if Lin Sun was really alive, then he would be a threat to them that they couldn't ignore. So what if he's alive? He has just broken through the martial emperor realm. No matter how extraordinary he is, if we join hands, we will definitely have a chance to kill him. Zhang Liu of the Wilderness Taoist court said coldly. He was at the 6th level of the martial emperor realm. When Lin Sun was going through the heavenly tribulation, he was the first one to rush over and threaten him. Brother Zhang Liu is right. This young man is indeed a threat. But how can he be a match for hundreds of us? Cloudy Light Sword Emperor of the primordial imperial family said. He had led dozens of martial emperors to besiege Xia Ji when Lin Sun was going through the heavenly tribulation. Someone reminded, "Don't forget that there is a stronger woman with him." "It's just the 2 of them." Cloudy Light Sword Emperor snorted coldly. He was still brooding over his failure to capture Xie. Someone said with a smile, "In my opinion, we don't have to worry about the threat this young man poses. After all, when the nirvana ends, sure Tiandi will be the first one to come after him." As soon as these words came out, the other old monsters felt a wave of relief wash over their bodies. Indeed, Lin Sun was a wanted target of Shi Tiandi. Everyone, when this young man became a martial emperor, he also took away the opportunity to become an immortal supreme. "Are you really willing to give up just like that?" Someone said softly. "If you ask me, we might be able to threaten Lin Sun if we capture that old man Feng Ling now." Whoosh! As soon as he said this, all eyes turned toward one person, Battle Emperor Feng Ling. Chapter 2281. Battle Emperor Feng Ling's body stiffened, and his heart sank to the bottom. After living for countless years, how could he not understand what these old bastards wanted to do? Old Feng Ling has the Yellow Heaven Court behind him. If we use him to threaten the remnants of Fangtsuan Mountain, isn't that a bit too much? Someone asked. He, old Feng Ling is stubborn and secretly colludes with the remnants of Fangtsuan Mountain. If the Yellow Heaven Court finds out about this, they will definitely see old Feng Ling as a traitor. Battle Emperor Tsang Lu sneered. "Fellow Taoists of the Yellow Heaven Court, what do you think? This time they came to Nirvana?" There were 7 or 8 old monsters of the Yellow Heaven Court from the Sky of Freedom, including Battle Emperor Feng Ling. However, at this moment, they all sighed in their hearts, extremely dissatisfied with Battle Emperor Feng Ling's actions. However, they were from the same sect after all, and they couldn't be too ruthless at such a time. For a moment, they couldn't help but hesitate. For the sake of the Yellow Heaven Court, they had to consider whether they would offend Heavenly Emperor Shi, but they couldn't bear to give up on Battle Emperor Feng Ling just like that. "Why are you asking them? Capture old Feng Ling first." A martial emperor from the Divine Illumination Ancient Sect shouted with a murderous intent. Instantly, many people responded. The scene was restless, and many malicious gazes locked onto Battle Emperor Feng Ling. Those old monsters from the same sect as him were still hesitating. At this moment, Battle Emperor Feng Ling's heart turned cold. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "I did it. From today onwards, I, Feng Ling, am no longer a member of the Yellow Heaven Court. Whoever wants to fight, feel free to try." His voice shook the entire scene. He was going all out. His aura surged into the sky and spread out. His bearing was ferocious and intimidating. For a moment, many old monsters were intimidated. After all, Battle Emperor Feng Ling was also a 4th-level martial emperor. Among these old monsters, he wasn't the strongest, but he wasn't an ordinary martial emperor either. If he really went all out, many people would have to think about the consequences. Did you hear that? This old thing has already left the Yellow Heaven Court. What are you hesitating for? Capture him quickly. Battle Emperor Tsang Lu roared. Many hesitated. After all, they weren't from the same faction. If it wasn't necessary, no one was willing to offend a 4th-level emperor. Moreover, who could guarantee that the Black-Yellow Dao Court wouldn't take revenge in the future? However, there were also people who directly made a move, such as the Divine Sunlight Ancient Sect, the Hidden Land Realm, the Untainted Land Court, the Demon's Court, and so on. These major forces were not afraid of the Black-Yellow Celestial Court. Boom! Divine radiance rumbled, and the light of the way flowed. In an instant, dozens of great emperors made their move. Many of them were 6th-level great emperors like Battle Emperor Tsang Lu. Battle God Feng Ling was naturally not going to resign himself to his fate. He attacked with all his might in an attempt to carve out a path of survival. But reality was cruel. Emperors were everywhere and dozens of them were attacking together. This situation was enough to make any emperor collapse. Bang! In the blink of an eye, Battle God Feng Ling was sent flying. He was severely injured and his body was covered in blood. It wasn't that he was weak, but that his opponents were all incomparably strong. Furthermore, this wasn't the Great Wall of 10,000 paths, but the Nirvana path. The sky of freedom was shrouded in the power of order. In such a place, no external objects could be used. In other words, battle god Feng Ling could only rely on his own cultivation to battle, but how could he possibly be a match for a bunch of old antiques? Struggling was futile. Even if I die, I'll drag a few of you down with me, battle god Feng Ling roared. His hair was disheveled, and he seemed to have gone mad. The aura of an emperor wreaked havoc all over his body, causing heaven and earth to tremble. Generally speaking, great emperors were extremely difficult to kill. Even a drop of blood or a wisp of remnant soul could be recovered in the future. If an emperor realm cultivator were to go all out, the power they could produce would be absolutely terrifying. At this moment, battle god Feng Ling was fighting with his life on the line. Many great emperors' expressions changed, and they couldn't help but become vigilant. No one wanted to fight with someone who was about to die. It was too dangerous and not worth it. Even so, battle god Feng Ling was still suppressed to the point where he couldn't even raise his head. He was constantly injured, and it was as if he had turned into a man of blood. Are we just going to stand by and watch? In the distance, the old monsters from the black-yellow celestial court looked uncertain. One of them had red eyes. Feng Ling is a member of our black-yellow celestial court. In this situation, even if the sect master came, he would be powerless to stop it. Not to mention, Feng Ling is no longer a member of the black-yellow celestial court. One of them gritted his teeth and said, "Listen to me, no matter who it is, no one is allowed to make a move. Otherwise, it will only harm our black-yellow celestial court." These old monsters from the black-yellow celestial court couldn't help but feel sad. Just because they were afraid of heavenly emperor Sure, they could only watch their fellow disciples suffer? This was too cruel. Don't kill him, capture him alive. A dead person is worthless. In the distance, the cold and indifferent voice of battle god Song Lu sounded. They saw that battle god Feng Ling was already beyond recognition, and his figure was broken. He was like a cub surrounded by a pack of wolves, constantly gnawing at him. His bloody figure was full of despair. An existence of the fourth level of the Emperor realm, in the outside world, was enough to be respected by billions of people, enough to be worshipped as a god wherever he went, enough to be, but at this moment, battle god Feng Ling really couldn't hold on any longer. There were vague signs in his consciousness. Want to capture me alive? Not a chance. At this last moment, he laughed hoarsely, and his blood-stained face was full of mockery. Sooner or later, all of you who act as dogs for Heavenly Emperor Sure will die a horrible death. The Emperor Realm figures were all enraged, and their expressions became colder and colder. But right at this moment, another voice resounded, "Well said, big brother." One sentence, 5 words, like a divine thunder descending from the heavens, rumbled in all directions and caused the heaven and earth to tremble. Some of the Emperor Realm figures with average strength trembled all over, their eardrums stinging from this voice, and they saw stars before their eyes. And as the voice sounded, a figure appeared out of thin air, and he waved his sleeve. Boom! Endless divine splendor spread out, and the figures that were charging toward battle god Feng Ling were all scattered, and they staggered back. For a time, exclamations of surprise rang out from all directions. "It's him! This little bastard is actually still alive. So, he's already a peak great emperor?" Not only that, the fortune related to the immortal supreme must have also been obtained by him. The nearby old monsters were all agitated, but they all stopped their attacks, and their eyes flashed as they looked toward the tall figure that had suddenly appeared. He was dressed in a moon-white robe, and his black hair was casually draped over his shoulders. He was calm and otherworldly, and his entire body exuded an ethereal charm. It was Lin Sun. Previously, he had just cooked a variety of delicious dishes and was about to enjoy them with Xia Ji when he sensed this battle. especially when he saw that battle god Feng Ling was being ganged up on. He couldn't suppress the boundless rage in his heart. In the past few days, on the vast Great Wall, only battle god Feng Ling had seen him as a friend, and he had taken care of and supported him. How could Lin Sun leave him in the lurch? You shouldn't have come. Battle god Feng Ling's voice was hoarse, and he was panting heavily. His entire body was showing signs of disorder, and he was severely injured and on the verge of death. But when he saw Lin Sun, he was also excited, surprised, and comforted. In an instant, his emotions surged like thunder. In such a dangerous situation, his fellow sect members had all disappeared, and those old geezers from the starry heavens wanted nothing more than to eat him alive. Only Lin Sun, who was wanted by Emperor Shi Tiandi, stood out and risked his life to help. For a moment, battle god Feng Ling didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Brother, I'm the one who dragged you into this. If anything happens to you, I, Lin Daoyuan, will feel guilty for the rest of my life. Lin Sun took a deep breath, and his dark eyes scanned the martial emperors. Plus, it's just killing some old dogs, what's so hard about it? Arrogant. Battle god Sang Lu's voice was cold. Do you think you're invincible just because you've reached the Emperor realm? Everyone here is a senior above the martial Emperor realm. What gives you the right to be so arrogant? Everyone, this kid has appeared, and he's wanted by Emperor Shi Tiandi. If anyone doesn't make a move today, then, if Emperor Shi Tiandi finds out, you should know the consequences. An ancestor of the divine Sunshine Ancient sect said coldly. Just these words alone caused the bodies of those old fellows that were surprised and bewildered, and they intended to watch idly by the side to stiffen while their expressions changed indeterminately. Don't be scared by this kid, we have hundreds of martial emperors here. How can we not kill a young man who has just become a martial emperor? Hundreds of supreme figures from all over the starry sky. If they are scared by a survivor of Mount Fangtsuan, it will be too embarrassing. All kinds of voices sounded, making the atmosphere more oppressive and solemn, and all eyes were focused on Lin Sun. As for the seriously injured battle god Feng Ling, in their eyes, he was no longer important. However, although there was a lot of noise, no one dared to make a move. No one was a fool. Before Lin Sun became a martial emperor, he was able to kill the astral beast, which was comparable to the third level of the martial emperor realm, not to mention now. He was the first martial emperor to become a martial emperor in the past 100,000 years, like a legend. Arrogant? Lin Sun sneered. Don't worry, even if you don't want to fight today, I won't let you go. His voice was like the sound of the great Tao, overwhelming the whole place. He would never forget how these old guys from all over the starry sky ridiculed, mocked, threatened, and cursed him when he was going through the heavenly tribulation. He would never forget how despicable the Cloud Light Sword Emperor and his people were to attack Xia Ji, using her to threaten him. And he would never forget that these old bastards were the dogs of Emperor Shi Tiandi. Young man, you are already the enemy of the whole world, yet you still speak so arrogantly, aren't you afraid of being laughed at? An old monk in the Hidden Land realm said expressionlessly, his aura obscure and gloomy, flowing with Emperor's Dharma light, showing a high and mighty posture, as if he was reprimanding a junior. Lin Sun's black eyes were indifferent, and he said casually, Old bald ass, before you die, I might as well tell you that one day, I, Lin Daoyuan, will crush the Xidagarba mountain gate and destroy the inheritance of Xidagarba mountain. As soon as he said this, the old monk's eyelids twitched, and killing intent surged around him, and he attacked immediately. Chapter 2282. The inky black light of Buddha flowed and intertwined with the law of Emperor Tao, turning into a seal that covered the sky. The shadow of the Buddha sat in it, chanting Sanskrit and exuding the charm of great wisdom, perfection and fearlessness. The Great Silent Seal. The old monk from the Hidden Land realm used the most powerful technique of his life, displaying the supreme power of an old monster in the third level of the Emperor realm. A single seal could cause the sky to collapse, the earth to sink and everything to be destroyed. Lin Sun stretched out his right hand as if he was drawing a sword. Chi. The 3-inch blade appeared, shooting out hundreds of feet of sword chi, setting off unparalleled power. In the Great Silent Seal, the shadow of the Buddha was cut in half by the sword chi. The rolling sound of Sanskrit was drowned out by the sword chi. Then, the seal exploded in the void and was cut into pieces like a piece of paper. In the distance, the old monk sensed that something was wrong. The 3-inch sword was coming at him with a sharp aura. Puff! A bloody head was tossed into the air. The sword chi, like a landslide and a tsunami, drowned the headless body and crushed it into pieces. The void nearby collapsed under the pressure of the sword. Unparalleled turbulence swept out, startling some of the nearby Emperor Realm cultivators and forcing them to dodge. The entire place was silent, not a single sound could be heard. The 3-inch blade and the old monk in the 3rd level of the Emperor Realm were killed in an instant. It was unbelievably fast and terrifying. Looking at Lin Sun, he stood there casually, as if nothing had happened, and uttered 4 words softly, "Don't overestimate yourself." Everyone's expression changed and their eyes flashed. Some of the old monsters below the 3rd level Emperor Realm felt goosebumps all over their bodies. How were they supposed to fight back? This was a one-sided massacre. This kid's battle prowess is extraordinary to begin with. It's simply not something that ordinary people can compare to. Everyone, please do not be frightened by this scene. Someone shouted to boost the morale. It would be too embarrassing if hundreds of Emperor Realm cultivators were intimidated by this. Lin Sun looked up and saw that the speaker was a man in a yellow robe, hiding in the crowd. Noisy. His eyes were cold as he drew his sword in the void. Chi. A 6-inch long sword condensed, and it seemed as if it had appeared inch by inch from the ages. It illuminated the mountains and rivers, shocked the world, and caused the surroundings to tremble. Boundlessly terrifying sword intent also soared into the heavens and earth at this moment. 3 inches of eternal silence, 6 inches of eternal death. Not good. The yellow-robed man's pupils constricted. He felt as if there was a blade on his back. This sword had firmly locked onto his aura. It was clearly aimed at him. Whoosh! Without hesitation, he chose to dodge. However, when the sword chi slashed out, it seemed as if it had eyes of its own. In an instant, it tore through the air and arrived before him. It was even faster than teleportation, and it emanated an all-conquering might. In the void, the yellow-robed man's aura surged, and layers of light appeared, like layers of divine armor protecting his body. At this moment of crisis, he was giving it his all. As long as he could block the attack for a split second, he would be able to avoid the attack. Boom! The sword chi slashed over, and the layers of defensive power that were like divine armor exploded like illusory bubbles at this moment. The peerless sword chi attacked, and his entire body was cut in half. Splash! A thick scarlet rain of blood splattered. This old man from an ancient Emperor clan with the strength of the 4th level of the Emperor Realm was killed in the air. His miserable death caused the hundreds of emperors present to turn pale. He was too strong, and his swordsmanship was simply unparalleled. Once the sword was unleashed, life and death were decided. Such a scene of death shocked the old monsters once again. For nearly 100,000 years, they had not tasted the glory of the great emperor. Now, this glory had once again appeared in the world. Above the Emperor Realm, there was an absolute peak, and there was indeed a world of difference. Battle Emperor Feng Ling's eyes flickered. He could imagine that Lin Sun would be very strong after becoming a great emperor, but he didn't expect him to be this strong. Let's attack together, we can't let him kill us one by one. The Cloud Light Sword Emperor, who had once led a group to kill Xia Ji, had a gloomy expression on his face as he said in a thunderous voice, "Also, doesn't this kid want to protect Ling Kong? We must not let Ling Kong go." This was actually a reminder for everyone to attack Battle Emperor Ling Kong together so that he could restrain Lin Sun. After all, in the nirvana of freedom, external objects and forces couldn't be used. If Lin Sun wanted to protect Battle Emperor Ling Kong, he could only stay by his side. Many old monsters' eyes lit up, and they were ready to make a move. How despicable, how shameless! Battle God Ling Feng was enraged to the extreme. It was already disgraceful for him to send out several hundred martial emperors to deal with a young man who had just become a martial emperor. But now, those old B***stards were still using such despicable tricks. Young friend, don't worry about me. I can already smile in the underworld if you help me before I die. Battle Emperor Ling Feng's eyes were filled with determination. He wouldn't let himself become Lin Sun's burden. What do you mean smile in the underworld? Just watch the show, Lin Sun said as his voice spread from his lips. Xie, are you full? His voice soared into the sky. So. Xie's heavenly voice came from the top of the Great Wall. As she said this, her figure suddenly teleported over like a ray of black light. When they saw her appear, the old monsters were all shocked. This was a woman who was even more vicious than the remnants of Fangtsuan Mountain. Sword Emperor Yun Guang had led dozens of people before, but he still couldn't capture her. Come with me, let's watch the show. Xie picked up Battle Emperor Feng Ling and flew into the sky. She stood in the sky and took out a huge green spirit melon before handing it to Battle Emperor Feng Ling. Eat the melon. Battle Emperor Feng Ling was stunned. How could he be in the mood to eat a melon at a time like this? Crack! Xie exerted force in her hand, and the spirit melon in her hand was neatly divided into pieces. She ate it first. If you think you can take us down one by one, I won't stop you. On the ground, Lin Sun stretched his body and spoke calmly. The Battle Emperor's expressions flickered. Lin Sun alone was enough to make them feel threatened. Who would dare to provoke a woman who was even more troublesome than Lin Sun? How arrogant! Sword Emperor Yun Guang yelled. Everyone, let's not waste any more time. Let's kill this bastard together. Boom! His figure lit up like a peerless immortal sword being unsheathed. With a wave of his hand, he unleashed a dazzling beam of sword chi. Die! Hidden Flow Battle Emperor, who was a 6th-level martial emperor, took a deep breath and also began his attack. Seeing this, the others acted as if they had found their leader. Among them, the old monsters from the 6 Dao courts and the 10 battle tribes were the most fearless and ferocious. Boom! Heaven and earth were turned upside down, and the sun and moon lost their light. The heaven and earth instantly fell into a state of turmoil. Divine light flowed, Dao light fell like rain, and the terrifying Emperor Dao laws surged like a vast ocean. If such a scene happened on the starry sky ancient path, it could easily sink a small world. Facing such a siege, Lin Sun also took a deep breath, and the murderous intent and battle intent around him were ignited. In an instant, the 5 doppelgangers dashed out, and each of them performed a supreme technique and rushed in all directions. Lin Sun's original body was like a great abyss that appeared in the world, connecting the 9 serenities below and devouring the sky above. As he moved forward, the brilliant Emperor Dao laws erupted like lava, sweeping across the battlefield. Boom! Countless Taishan sword chi whizzed forward, and every sword chi flashed with the unparalleled sharpness that belonged to the Emperor Dao, evolving into countless wonderful images. In an instant, all the attacks that came whistling forward were crushed by the dense sword chi. The sword light flowed, and wherever it passed, the void was torn apart. Puff, puff. Some martial emperors could not dodge in time and were immediately injured by the sword. Blood splattered everywhere, and screams of alarm rang out. In this moment of confrontation, the siege was directly broken by Lin Sun. He seemed to move horizontally, and the abyss around him rotated, with the momentum of invincibility. Endless sword chi whizzed in the void, like a torrent of sword Tao bursting out of a dam, smashing the sky and killing the universe. It was unstoppable. Die! An old antique roared and rushed over. As he waved his fist, thousands of red thunderbolts appeared and enveloped Lin Sun. The thunderbolts were extremely overbearing and revealed an aura of destruction. Lin Sun did not dodge, and the chaotic abyss rotated, swallowing up the thousands of thunderbolts and obliterating them. His figure had already rushed in front of the old antique, and he slapped him. Crack! The old antique, who was at the 4th level of the Emperor realm, was directly smashed into pieces, exploding with a loud bang. Blood and broken bones splattered everywhere. Lin Sun did not even look at it. His figure flickered, and he swept across the battlefield. In a flash, more than 10 old monsters of the Emperor realm were killed, and dozens of old monsters were seriously injured. The terrible turbulence of power mixed with the smell of blood surged through the world. In other places, Lin Sun's 5 doppelgangers, who had the same power as himself, also displayed the divine power of the Emperor realm. The greenwood Taoist body displayed the power of life and death, like the ancient blue sky. The scarlet fire Taoist body was like a flame, burning the sky and destroying the earth, refining the universe with fire. The yellow Taoist body was like a towering divine mountain, with the power to cover the sky, crushing everything. The most powerful one was the black water Tao physique. She used the 3000 weak water Tao physique. In an instant, 3000 figures appeared in the field. These 3000 figures were the same as the Blackwater Taoist body, but they possessed the power of the Quasi-Emperor Ju Fu, which was far beyond the Emperor realm. In the past, Lin Sun had rarely used the Blackwater Taoist body, because the power of the 3000 figures was a realm lower than his own cultivation, so it seemed very weak. But now it was different. The 3000 figures all had the battle strength of the Quasi-Emperor Ju Fu, which was not ordinary. It was no exaggeration to say that the battle strength of each of these 3000 figures could compete with an ordinary person at the 1st level of the Emperor realm. In the huge battlefield, the situation had completely changed. The 3000 figures were densely packed, covering the sky and earth. Together with Lin Sun's 5 doppelgangers, they surrounded the hundreds of Emperor realm cultivators. This sudden scene caused those old freaks to cry out in alarm, and the place fell into chaos. As far as the eye could see, there were Lin Sun's figures everywhere. This scene was indeed too horrifying, too terrifying. Even Xia Ji and War Emperor Feng Ling, who were watching the battle from high up in the sky, could not help but be stunned. They could not believe that this was the battle strength of Lin Sun alone. It was also at this moment that people realized how abnormal and heaven-defying Lin Sun was after he stepped into the Emperor realm. Chapter 2283. The world was in chaos. Lin Sun's clones covered the battlefield and crisscrossed with one another. The hundreds of great emperors panicked. Even though they'd instantly determined that it was a clone technique, when they truly fought those 3000 figures, all of them noticed to their horror that the combat strength of those clones was extraordinarily formidable. Boom! An expert of the 1st level martial Emperor realm was surrounded by more than 10 doppelgangers of the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm, and was killed in an instant. His body and soul were completely destroyed. On the other side, a 3rd level Great Emperor was fighting with all his might. Although he managed to defeat the clones, he was severely injured and his body was bleeding profusely. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He couldn't believe that Lin Sun's clone was able to injure him, a 3rd level Emperor realm cultivator. At the same time, in different parts of the battlefield, after the initial panic, the old monsters had figured out the strength of the clones. An ordinary 1st level Emperor realm cultivator would be dead for sure if they were ganged up on. A 2nd level Great Emperor would have a chance to fight back, but they would also be killed. 3rd level Emperors had the power to kill these doppelgangers, but they would be injured in the process. Only a 4th level Great Emperor and above would be able to suppress and kill the clone. Even so, the old monsters were still in disbelief. If the clones were this strong, how strong would Lin Sun's main body be? Rumble, the world shook even more violently. Blood rained down and the terrifying light of the Tao spread out, shaking the world. The 3,000 clones of the Blackwater Taoist physique were being destroyed one by one, but at the same time, the old monsters were being killed. At the same time, the 4 clones, Greenwood, Platinum, Yellow Earth, and Scarlet Flame, were fighting fiercely with some 5th and 6th level Great Emperors. After Lin Sun became a Great Emperor, the 5 Great Taoist physiques were no weaker than his main body. The Blackwater Taoist physique, for example, was able to trap the entire battlefield with the 3,000 weak water. Similarly, the might and resources possessed by the other 4 Tao bodies weren't inferior to them in any way. At this moment, every single one of them had erupted with peerless and monstrous combat strength that reigned supreme in the universe in this battle. Fortunately, these Tao bodies were able to block and kill Lin Sun. Otherwise, he wouldn't be surrounded by a group of 5th and 6th level emperors. Up in the sky, battle god Feng Ling looked down. The entire battlefield was filled with destructive torrents of the Grand Tao, and dazzling divine radiance swept out like a river and shook the heavens and the earth. Hundreds of great emperors were caught up in the bloody battle. As time passed, more and more people died. On the other hand, Lin Sun's momentum was like a rainbow, and he was like a great abyss that covered the sky and the earth. He swept through the battlefield and slaughtered with unparalleled might. Battle Monarch Feng Ling's heart trembled, and his pupils dilated in disbelief. A young man who had just become a martial emperor was fighting against hundreds of martial emperor old monsters from the starry heavens. An emperor battle of this scale had never been seen before in the past. Although there were many great emperors participating in the Tao battles of the 10 directions and the Tao battles of the emperors, none of them were like this, where one person was fighting against all enemies by himself. Battle Monarch Feng Ling was sure that if news of today's battle were to spread, the entire ancient path of the stars would fall into an uproar and shock. And Lin Sun, who had defeated all the great emperors by himself, was destined to shock the world. He was destined to become a heaven-connecting overlord who could shake the entire ancient path of the stars with a stomp of his foot. Even throughout the ages, throughout the heavens, there wasn't a single person that could compare to him. Crunch, crunch, the crisp sound of someone eating melons sounded in his ears. Battle Monarch Feng Ling's lips twitched in shock, and his heart was filled with a strange and indescribable feeling. In the face of such an unprecedented battle between emperors, Xia Ji was still acting like she was watching a show. This was very strange. Let's go. In the chaotic and turbulent battlefield, some of the cultivators below the 3rd level of the Emperor realm chose to flee without any hesitation. The truth was that from the start of the battle until now, cultivators at their level were the most threatened, and the number of casualties was also the highest. On the other hand, Lin Sun had yet to be suppressed by anyone, and this made them see no hope of victory. Moreover, they came from different forces and were not united. How could they risk their lives just because of a command from Heavenly Monarchshire? Run. They could only run. In an instant, the battlefield was in chaos as figures fled in all directions like stray dogs. If you run now, aren't you afraid that Heavenly Monarchshire will come after you later? Battle Monarch Song Lu of the primitive Tao court roared. His face was livid with anger. These bastards, they fled as soon as the situation turned sour. What a coward! If we don't run, do we have to die with you? Old man Song Lu, if you're willing to be a loyal dog for Heavenly Monarchshire, then don't run this time. A torrent of curses sounded. Battle Monarch Song Lu was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. What do you mean by a mob? That's it. When there's a profit to be made, they run faster than anyone else, but when the situation turns sour, they're the first to run. Boom. A terrifying Tao light swept across as Lin Sun's Greenwood Taoist physique attacked. Battle Monarch Song Lu didn't dare to be distracted anymore and fought with all his might, venting his anger in the battle. Awesome! In the sky, Battle Monarch Feng Ling's blood boiled with excitement as he witnessed this scene. Young lady, are we going to chase after those guys? Xia Ji ate the melon in her hand and took out another one to break it open. The current situation is far from a landslide. Although Lin Sun is strong, there are still many troublesome old fools. Battle Monarch Feng Ling looked closely and found that most of those who were fleeing were below the 3rd level of the Emperor Realm. There were at least 100 who were above the 4th level of the Emperor Realm. Among them, there were more than 10 who were at the 6th level of the Emperor Realm, and a few dozen who were at the 5th level of the Emperor Realm. The strength of this lineup was not to be underestimated. On the other hand, most of Lin Sun's 3,000 doppelgangers had already dissipated. They were no longer much of a threat to those old monsters who were above the 4th level of the Emperor Realm. Meanwhile, his main body and the 5 Taoist physiques were being attacked and pinned down. This is already extremely impressive, Battle Monarch Feng Ling murmured. A single person was able to fight against hundreds of Emperor Realm old monsters and hold them off until now. Even those 5th and 6th level Emperor Realm cultivators were unable to suppress him. How terrifying was this? The real battle begins now. Xia Ji ate a melon and commented seriously, those guys just now are no longer enough. Battle Monarch Feng Ling smiled bitterly. How many people in this world would dare to look down on those Emperor Realm cultivators like this? Boom! A streak of dazzling sword chi filled the sky. The Cloud Light Sword Monarch and several old monsters of the 6th level of the Emperor Realm attacked Lin Sun with all their might. I'd like to see how long you, a brat who has just become a martial emperor, can last. The Cloud Light Sword Monarch gritted his teeth. His murderous intent was shocking as his martial emperor aura surged. He was a sword cultivator of the 5th level of the Emperor Realm, a peerless sword monarch. Whoever escapes today will be my grandson. Tui, I, Lin Daoyuan, don't have unfilial descendants like you. At this moment, Lin Sun's aura became more and more profound. Like a chaotic abyss, a peerless aura erupted from him. He had an invincible aura. He swung his fist. Boom! With a single punch, the sky and earth collapsed. Brat, I'll destroy your soul in a moment. The Cloud Light Sword Monarch roared angrily as he waved his sword chi to block the punch. But in the blink of an eye, his sword chi was crushed and he staggered backward. If it weren't for the other old monsters surrounding and restraining Lin Sun, the consequences would be unimaginable. Later? I'll send you on your way now. As he said, Lin Sun stretched out his hand and grasped the air. A 9-inch sword chi suddenly appeared as if it was unsheathed from the ancient times. The dazzling sword chi pierced through the sky and the earth. He drew the sword. 9-inch eternal destruction. The profound meaning of this sword was like drawing the sword and asking the sky. It had a kind of sharpness that could break through the 9 heavens. Boom! The old monsters who besieged Lin Sun were shaken away by this sword in an instant. Their faces all changed and their eyes were full of horror. They couldn't imagine how Lin Sun could have such a powerful combat power when he was besieged. The Cloud Light Sword Monarch let out a strange cry full of anger. He bore the brunt of the attack and was locked by this sword. No matter how he tried to dodge, he couldn't get rid of it. No matter how he tried to resist, he was defeated by this sword. Help me! The Cloud Light Sword Monarch panicked and roared. But as soon as his voice sounded, it stopped abruptly. He saw, bang! The sword chi tore the sky apart and slashed him in the air. His body was crushed by the vast sword chi, turning into a rain of blood and dissipating completely. An unparalleled sword monarch at the 5th level of the Emperor Realm had died under a single sword. This was also the first person at the 5th level of the Emperor Realm to be killed since the beginning of the battle. When the old monsters at the 6th level of the Emperor Realm witnessed this scene, their hearts trembled and their scalps went numb. Looking at Lin Sun, he was surrounded by a vast Emperor aura. He was as bright as the immortal sun, illuminating the land and overpowering the arrogance of the old monsters. At this moment, the fourth level of the Emperor realm, who were still struggling on the battlefield, felt a boundless chill, and their fighting spirit was shaken. The Cloud Light Sword Monarch was so powerful, but he was also killed by Lin Sun in a single strike. They didn't dare to imagine that without the suppression of the old monsters at the sixth level of the Emperor realm, none of them would be a match for Lin Sun. Without any hesitation, the fourth level of the Emperor realm also fled. Another batch has been eliminated. Xia Ji, who was eating melon, had a hint of surprise in her clear voice. In comparison, Lin Sun, who has stepped into the Emperor realm, is actually stronger than me? She seemed to be in disbelief as well. It was as if she had always thought that Lin Sun could only be protected by her and that she had always been stronger than Lin Sun. Battle Emperor Feng Ling had a strange expression on his face. He had almost forgotten that this girl beside him was also a heaven-defying character. Chapter 2284. There were only about 50 Emperor Realm old monsters left on the battlefield. Compared to the beginning, the number had decreased by about 80%. Of these 80%, 20% were cultivators below the fourth level of the Emperor Realm. There were about 60 of them. The others chose to escape. In other words, the number of Emperor Realm cultivators that Lin Sun had killed was far less than the number of Emperor Realm cultivators that had escaped. This also proved that this was indeed a motley crew, and they were far from being of the same breadth and branch, moving in and out together. But even so, the number of Emperor Realm experts killed by Lin Sun was still enough to shock the whole world. The battle did not end there. On the contrary, it was getting more and more dangerous. Every single one of the 50 old monsters that remained had the fighting strength of a 5th or 6th level martial emperor. Their auras were extremely terrifying. Even if Lin Sun killed Sword Emperor Yunguang, which made their hearts tremble, they didn't retreat. First, because they believed that Lin Sun, who had just stepped into the Emperor realm, would not be able to last long. First, because they were confident that even if the worst happened, they would be able to retreat with their own strength. In fact, Lin Sun and the 5 Tao bodies were indeed trapped. The situation they were facing had not changed much. It was even more difficult for Lin Sun to kill an opponent like the Cloud Light Sword Emperor. The reason was that these old monsters had become vigilant and serious. They saw Lin Sun as their greatest enemy. Every time they sensed danger, they would rather retreat than fight him head-on. Boom! The battlefield was filled with murderous intent. The sound of Tao rumbled and resounded in all directions. "Little bastard, I will exhaust you to death." Some of the old monsters had cold and hateful looks on their faces. A first-level Emperor Realm cultivator with heaven-defying combat strength had fought to this point. This made their hearts palpitate. It was an unspeakable humiliation. If we don't kill him this time, I'm afraid no one in the heavens will be able to suppress him in the future. Some of the old monsters had serious looks on their faces. He had just stepped into the Emperor Realm, and he already had the combat strength to kill a 5th-level Emperor Realm cultivator. This was not just heaven-defying, it was simply abnormal. Since ancient times, who had just become an Emperor Realm cultivator with such unparalleled combat strength? If such a person survived, as his cultivation and strength increased, he was destined to become more and more powerful and terrifying. If that time really came, then who in the all heavens would be a match for him? Kill. Even if we can't seize his fortune, we have to completely eradicate this great threat. Some old monsters roared with a murderous intent. They had completely offended Lin Sun a long time ago. Needless to say, if Lin Sun survived, they would suffer from Lin Sun's revenge sooner or later. This was what they feared the most. One can only be a thief for 1,000 days, how can one guard against a thief for 1,000 days? Don't worry, when I set foot on the starry ancient path again, I will definitely pay you a visit one by one and settle the score with all of you. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep, and his whole body was steaming with the surging Emperor Law, which evolved into an abyss. Even though he was besieged and in a dangerous situation, he was not suppressed. In other words, from the very beginning, he had been using these old bastards to consolidate his cultivation. Gang Ju became an emperor. The new realm, new power, and new cultivation made Lin Sun's body undergo earth-shaking changes. However, this kind of change needed to be acclimatized and consolidated. Battling was undoubtedly the most direct and simple way to temper himself. Not only could he grasp the strength of the Emperor realm as quickly as possible, he could also use this opportunity to test and temper his cultivation. Everyone heard it as well. This kid is utterly deranged. If he's allowed to live, he'll bring calamity to the universe sooner or later and give rise to countless storms of blood. One of the old-timers had a livid expression on his face as he howled, "Kill! Kill this fiend!" The eyes of those old freaks turned red, and their attacks grew stronger and stronger, causing this expanse of the heavens and the earth to fall into great chaos and upheaval. The pressure on Lin Sun increased tremendously. He chanted a Tao voice and recalled his 5 Taoist forms at once. Instead of fighting on their own, he fought with his own body. In this way, although he suddenly became the target of everyone, he didn't need to fear the oppression of enemies from all directions with the help of his 5 clones. In the sky, even Battle Monarch Feng Ling couldn't help but feel nervous. The first level of the Emperor realm was the state of no obsession. The so-called no obsession meant not being bound by Tao or laws. Those who abide by it have a basis, and those who hold onto it have no obsession. To bear the burden of the Tao, one must have no obsession. When one reached this level, a world would be created within the body of the Emperor realm, constructed from the pure and abundant power of the Emperor realm. This world was also regarded as the My Emperor realm. The more profound one's cultivation was, the more vast and magnificent the My Emperor realm would be, and the more terrifying the power it released would be. In addition, at the first level of the Emperor realm, the soul would transform into the Dharma form of will. As long as the Dharma form and thoughts remained, one's cultivation would be eternal. When one's blood and chi transformed into the Emperor physique, one could be reborn even if there was only a drop of blood or a piece of bone left. This was the Emperor realm. As long as one didn't suffer an attack that would cause one to be annihilated, one's life was almost immortal and could live as long as the heavens. Therefore, there was a saying in the Emperor realm, "Those who have no obsession will live as long as the heavens and earth." Battle Monarch Feng Ling had also made his way up from the first level of the Emperor realm, so how could he not know the secrets of this level? In the past countless years, he had seen many cultivators of the first level of the Emperor realm. There were males and females, and they came in all shapes and sizes. Some of them had extraordinary foundations and could suppress those of the same level. They were dazzling beyond compare, and they were regarded as the rising stars of the Emperor realm. Their names resounded throughout the heavens, and their futures were limitless. There were also some who had ordinary foundations and weren't dazzling, but they were still Emperor realm cultivators after all. They were far superior to cultivators below the Emperor realm. The reason for this was that in the Dharma form of will, My Emperor realm, and Emperor physique, there were vast differences between cultivators of the same level. These 3 types of cultivation represented the refinement of soul, refinement of chi, and refinement of body. This was also why only those who cultivated in all 3 paths of cultivation had any hope of becoming Emperor realm cultivators. However, those who cultivated in all 3 paths of cultivation might not be able to refine all 3 paths to perfection. Therefore, there was a difference in strength among cultivators of the same level. Even though Battle Monarch Feng Ling had seen many cultivators of the first level of the Emperor realm in the past countless years, he had never seen anyone like Lin Sun, who was able to surpass several levels of the Emperor realm and fight against cultivators of the 5th and 6th level of the Emperor realm. This completely overturned Battle Monarch Feng Ling's understanding. He couldn't believe that this was the power of a cultivator of the first level of the Emperor Realm. He also knew that Lin Sun was the only Emperor Realm cultivator in the past 100,000 years. He also knew what kind of power the word Emperor Realm represented in the Emperor Realm, but he himself didn't know. However, he knew very well that in the ancient times there were also emperors of the Emperor Realm who walked the heavens, and they had also shone with dazzling brilliance that shocked the world. However, the Emperor Realm of the ancient era didn't seem to be as nature-defying and unbelievable as Lin Sun. It was recorded in the ancient books of the Dark Yellow Dao Court that in the primeval times, there was a peerless great emperor in the Dark Yellow Dao Court that appeared out of nowhere and suppressed 8 of his peers, who were at the 3rd level of the Emperor Realm by himself. Because of this, his name shook the world. However, this was also the most dazzling achievement of that Emperor Realm cultivator. He wasn't like Lin Sun, who could kill cultivators of the 4th level of the Emperor Realm as easily as turning over his hand and killing cultivators of the 5th level of the Emperor Realm. Furthermore, he was able to fight against a group of cultivators of the 5th and 6th level of the Emperor Realm by himself. This was too insane. He could be said to be the first person to do so since the beginning of time. However, Lin Sun was currently surrounded and in a perilous situation. Battle Monarch Feng Ling's heart couldn't help but tighten, and he didn't dare to breathe too loudly. Crack! Crack! The sound of Xia Ji eating melon rang out in his ears again. The crunching sound was extremely piercing. At this moment, Battle Monarch Feng Ling almost couldn't help but ask, Lin Sun is already in such a perilous situation, and you're still in the mood to eat melons? But in the end, he managed to restrain himself as he suddenly realized a problem. The melon-eating girl beside him was also an unbelievably powerful and ruthless person. She hadn't even made a move yet, so what was he worrying about? Moreover, if Lin Sun really was in mortal danger, how could this melon-eating girl remain indifferent? With this thought in mind, Battle Monarch Feng Ling's nervous heart instantly calmed down a little. He glanced at the jade-green spirit melon in Xia Ji's hand and gulped involuntarily. Was this melon really that delicious? Do you want to eat it? Xia Ji asked. Battle Monarch Feng Ling was slightly taken aback. He hesitated for a moment before replying, I can try it. He felt like he was about to lose face. How could he still be thinking about eating melons at a time like this? This seemed to be a little disrespectful to Brother Lin, who was fighting for his life. Xia Ji shoved all the spirit melons into Battle Monarch Feng Ling's hands before stretching her slender waist. It should be my turn soon. There was a hint of eagerness in her voice that was as clear as the sounds of nature. Battle Monarch Feng Ling took a bite of the spirit melon and savored the refreshing and sweet flesh. His heart became more and more relaxed. Miss Melon Eating was finally going to fight, so he could only eat the melon. But right at this moment, he suddenly froze. Xia Ji also froze. At the same time, Lin Sun, who was on the battlefield, suddenly took a deep breath, and a magnificent, dreamy light burst forth in front of him. In an instant, those old monsters who were besieging him seemed to be frozen, and their movements and figures all stopped. At this moment, Lin Sun and his 5 doppelgangers began to attack together. Pooh! 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 Peerlessly resplendent sword chi, palm prints that were forceful like a mountain, peerlessly sharp finger force, and dazzling beams of divine flames swept out together, and the people surrounding them were either slashed to death, killed, assassinated, or incinerated. All of this happened in an instant. The 7 old monsters who were besieging Lin Sun at the forefront were all killed on the spot. The scarlet rain of blood was like a burst of firecrackers, rising and falling one after another. Blood dyed the sky red. Chapter 2285. In an instant, the 7 old antiques were killed on the spot. This sudden scene caused everyone's hearts to tremble, and they retreated far away at the first possible moment. They couldn't help but reveal expressions of astonishment on their faces. Among the 7 antiques, there were 4 5th and 3 6th level Emperor realms. They'd been charging at the forefront earlier and had firmly pinned down Lin Sun, preventing him from breaking out of the encirclement. But now, all 7 of them who'd lived for countless years had been killed in the blink of an eye. This sudden scene was undoubtedly too terrifying, and it caused the fighting spirit of everyone present to suffer a blow, causing their expressions to change indeterminately. In the sky, Xia Ji, who was about to attack, was startled and said, "Give me another piece of melon." Battle Emperor Feng Ling grunted and subconsciously handed over a piece of melon. His heart was in turmoil. Just what kind of technique did Lin Sun use in that instant? Why was it so terrifying? It was as if time had stopped for a moment. On the battlefield, Lin Sun broke out of the encirclement like a trapped dragon rising into the sky. The light around him rumbled, and his aura grew stronger and stronger. His 5 clones charged together with him. Rumble! The void became chaotic and the light surged. In the blink of an eye, a 5th-level Emperor Realm Old Monster's defenses were blasted open by a single punch, and his body was crushed by the sky-devouring abyss. Blood splattered everywhere as he died violently on the battlefield. This caused a wave of panic and exclamations on the battlefield. If it was before, they were still confident that they could exhaust Lin Sun to death by relying on their superiority in combat strength and numbers. But now, as the 7 antiques were killed, and as Lin Sun broke out of the encirclement, they couldn't help but panic. They felt threatened, and their fighting spirit showed signs of weakening. A young man who just stepped into the Emperor Realm was actually able to annihilate hundreds of Emperor Realm experts by himself, and he'd slaughtered those seniors to the point their faces turned pale with horror. If news of this were to spread, who would dare to believe it? Everyone. If we don't work together, this kid will really overturn the heavens. Battle Emperor Zonglio of the primitive Dao court roared, and his voice shook the sky. His demeanor was wild, and his face was livid with rage and murderous intent. However, his words didn't have much of an effect. There was no one who wasn't afraid of death. Even emperors were no different from mortals when faced with fatal threats. Everyone, I'm willing to fight with my life on the line. I don't ask for all of you to put your lives on the line. I only ask that all of you attack with your full strength when I put my life on the line. If I still can't kill this kid, then even if I perish, I have nothing to say. The voice of the Hidden Flow Battle Monarch rang out again. It was sonorous and forceful, like the clashing of swords. As a 6th-rank Emperor Realm cultivator, the aura around him boiled as soon as he finished speaking. The terrifying aura of the Emperor Realm manifested a terrifying apocalyptic scene. Boom! He took a step forward and charged at Lin Sun with monstrous Taoist light. The surging Emperor Dao laws interweaved together, causing this expanse of space to collapse and sink into oblivion. How terrifying was a senior that possessed the might of lawlessness going all out? It was enough to kill ghosts and deities. The other emperors could tell that Battle Emperor Tsang Lu was risking his life. At that moment, they all realized that this might be their last chance to kill Lin Sun. Kill. We can't let Brother Tsang Lu risk his life alone. If we lose this battle, it's a small matter for us to lose face. Allowing this kid to live is the true calamity in our hearts. Kill. Instantly, the great emperors nearby attacked without hesitation, unleashing almost all of their cultivation and battle prowess. With Lin Sun as the center, the land in all directions was filled with these powerful emperors' powers. Every attack was imbued with different powers that could easily kill any 6th-rank Emperor Realm cultivator in this world. Young lady, the situation is dire. Battle Emperor Feng Ling cried out in alarm as he watched Lin Sun being swallowed by the countless energies. With a 6th-rank Emperor Realm cultivator leading the charge, dozens of other seniors joined forces and attacked with all their might. They were clearly planning to end this battle with their lives on the line. Young friend. Battle Emperor Feng Ling's eyes widened. He charged forward with all his might, but Xia Zhi blocked his way. Even if he only has one drop of blood left, he can still come back to life. Furthermore, Lin Sun might not be defeated so easily. Her voice was as clear as the sound of nature. She was still holding a half-eaten melon in her hand, and appeared very calm and composed. Kill. On the battlefield, a green light shot out from the sky and transformed into a stunning green rainbow. It was as if it was a flying sword in the hand of a peerless sword immortal. Boom! Tens of thousands of bolts of lightning fell from the sky, as if they were being punished by the heavens. It was as if an ancient thunder god had hurled a divine spear in his hand. The entire sky swept across the sky and enveloped Lin Sun. Aside from that, all kinds of earth-shattering Tao arts appeared and flooded the sky like rain. In that instant, Lin Sun was in an unprecedented, desperate situation. He still stood there as if he had been scared out of his wit. Such terrifying power was indeed enough to make one despair. Battle Emperor Feng Ling couldn't help but close his eyes. Boom! Countless attacks landed on Lin Sun's body. In that instant, heaven and earth were filled with the terrifying Emperor Tao energy. The sun and moon dimmed as heaven and earth sank, and the sky was easily torn to pieces. The surging and destructive power spread out and even pierced through the sky and struck the ground. The ground cracked open, and a huge bottomless pit with a radius of 10,000 feet appeared. "Is he dead?" Someone cried out in joy. Even a 6th-level Emperor Realm cultivator would perish under the combined might of so many emperors, let alone Lin Sun. Everyone looked up expectantly and saw an incredible scene. As the dust settled, a chaotic light floated above the pit. Amidst the roiling chaos, the grand scene that seemed like a furnace yet wasn't a furnace, like an abyss yet wasn't an abyss faintly appeared. The surging laws of the grand Tao seethed within it, and it formed boundless profound scenes. But Lin Sun's figure, which had been smashed to pieces, condensed little by little from the chaos and emerged. As Lin Sun's figure appeared, the nirvana? The original order energy of the starry sky in the sky of freedom pulsed with Lin Sun's breathing, as if it was resonating with him. It gave people the feeling that this world was controlled by Lin Sun, and he was the only supreme ruler of this world. Impossible! All of the old-timers stared with wide eyes, not daring to believe their eyes. Lin Sun had survived the attacks of so many powerful cultivators. Just what was his body made of? Could it be comparable to a supreme emperor weapon? Some people's pupils contracted as they recalled the scenes of Lin Sun's tribulation transcendence. He had been destroyed in the tribulation and the nirvana? It was as if he was undying and indestructible. He seems to have mastered the order energy of this world. An old-timer cried out in fear. Lin Sun's body was currently surrounded by an ancient and boundless aura, as if he was the ruler of all life. Even from afar, people couldn't help but tremble and want to kneel down. It looks like he has come into contact with and mastered some of the nirvana? The original order energy of the sky of freedom. Xia Zhi murmured in surprise. As for Battle Emperor Feng Ling, he was completely dumbfounded. The order energy of the sky of freedom could be comprehended and mastered? This was simply too unbelievable. I have to thank all of you for helping me comprehend the nirvana, the mysteries of the order energy of the sky of freedom. At this moment, Lin Sun, who was shrouded in the chaotic light, finally raised his eyes. His eyes were like a bottomless abyss, with a primordial aura that seemed to be able to devour and dominate everything. This was the manifestation of his great Tao. Like a furnace or an abyss, all kinds of Taoist arts surged within it. Now, let me send you on your way. Lin Sun slowly spread his hands like a rock spreading its wings. Boom! Heaven and earth resonated, and the abyss around Lin Sun drew on the momentum of the void. Like a giant koan, he swallowed billions of stars and set off monstrous waves in the void with an unimaginably terrifying power. In the face of this invincible power, All spells and supernatural powers were as vulnerable as ants, unable to withstand a single blow. "Hurry up and stop him!" Battle Emperor Tsang Lu roared as his heart palpitated. A terrifying black divine flame rose from his body, enough to scorch the void, and turned into a monstrous pillar of fire that burned toward Lin Sun. "Kill!" All the other seniors suppressed the terror in their hearts, and they circulated their cultivation and innate divine abilities to the limit. Heaven and earth were filled with boundless divine light, thunder, and divine fire surged like the sea. With so many old-timers attacking at the same time, even the void seemed to be cracked. This part of the world boiled into an unbearably turbulent chaos, causing everything within 1,000 kilometers to collapse. This attack was even more terrifying than the one before, and it surged forward madly. Because it was not only Battle Emperor Tsang Lu who was fighting with his life, but everyone else. Not only did Lin Sun not die, but he also seemed to be in nirvana. Comprehending and controlling the power of nirvana belonged to nirvana. The power of the Order of Mahasvara was enough to make anyone despair. Everyone knew that if Lin Sun could really use the power of the Order, they would be like fish on a chopping board, at his mercy. At this moment Lin Sun moved. With a slight movement of his body, he broke through the sound barrier in an instant, almost like a phantom, detached from space. Even the naked eye couldn't capture his figure. Swish! Thousands of meters away, Lin Sun drew his fingers together, and a sword chi condensed from immortal gold streaked across the sky. An old-timer at the 6th level of the Emperor realm was caught off guard, and let out an earth-shattering howl. His body was actually split into two from the middle. This horrible existence, who could restrain and shake Lin Sun before, had no room to resist at this time, like a fragile tofu. Whoosh! Blood rained down, thick and scarlet. "Kill him!" Battle Emperor Tsang Lu roared, the corners of his eyes splitting open and blood flowing out. Black flames surged around him, turning into a raging dragon that roared towards Lin Sun, wanting to burn him to ashes. But when Lin Sun attacked, it was like a chaotic abyss, drawing upon the power of the world and resonating with his own power. It was as if he was the ruler of this world. How could he possibly shake him? Lin Sun's figure was impenetrable as he extinguished the rolling black flames. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of one of the old-timers and punched out. Boom! Chapter 2286. No one could stop Lin Sun's path. Powerful! Too powerful! Feng Ling yelled excitedly. His eyes were full of fanaticism, as if he had turned into a loyal fan. Xia Ji ate the melon silently. She suddenly felt a little annoyed. It seemed that from now on, she could no longer protect Lin Sun as before. She didn't like this feeling at all. On the battlefield, Lin Sun was like a celestial emperor going on an expedition. His body was like a great abyss, engulfing the enemies in all directions. He charged at Hidden Flow Battle Emperor. Swish! A streak of sword chi flew across the sky. Sword Dao, 9 inches eternal destruction. Rise! Hidden Flow Battle Emperor was indeed a ruthless senior who had fought for countless years. At that moment, he reacted and condensed 12 secret maps of the Great Way in front of him. Each secret map was engraved with a Supreme Emperor's Way, which could withstand a full blow from 12 people of the same realm. But how terrifying was Lin Sun's current strength! At least in Nirvana, he could ignore all enemies. Boom! The 12 secret maps of the Great Way shone with dazzling Taoist light and broke apart from the middle. Like a rag cut by a pair of scissors, they collapsed and disappeared. Hidden Flow Battle Emperor's face showed a trace of confusion, disbelief, and extreme unwillingness. Then, a trace of blood appeared on his eyebrows. The trace of blood spread to his nose, chin, neck, chest, and then split into two halves in the air. A man at the 6th level of the Emperor realm of the primitive Taoist court, a lawless ancient land, was split in half by Lin Sun. Seeing this, the other old antiques were all enraged. Their attacks barely touched Lin Sun, but they were all crushed and destroyed by Lin Sun. If it went on like this, all of them would be killed by Lin Sun in a few seconds. Run! Some old monsters were scared out of their wits and turned around to escape. Previously, when those under the third level of the Emperor realm fled, they were extremely disdainful, thinking that those old guys were too spineless. But now they were also running away. This was like slapping themselves in the face, but they couldn't care less. At this moment, Lin Sun was simply too terrifying, and he was much stronger than before. The reason was that the quintessence energy of order that covered rebirth freedom was actually able to be controlled and utilized by him. This was no different from Shi Tiandi, who could control the forbidden power of order. Whoosh! Lin Sun's speed was so fast that he left a faint white mark in the void. He couldn't even react when the air was torn apart. This was the Tao of shifting that ignored the bindings of space. So. In the blink of an eye, another 4 old monsters were killed by Lin Sun. Every strike of his drew the power of heaven and earth in Zhou Su, and it was extremely powerful. It seemed that he was crushing all his opponents along the way, and he was invincible. Die! At this time, an old monster found an opportunity and slashed out with sword chi. The sword chi entwined with purple lightning sliced through the air. Lightning surged, and the sword chi turned into a lightning dragon that was dozens of feet long, seemingly unstoppable. Clang! Lin Sun didn't dodge, but directly took the blow with his fist. His fist, which was shining with chaotic aura, collided with the purple lightning sword chi, making a crisp sound of metal colliding. Under the old monster's shocked gaze, the strand of sword chi that he had spent his entire life's work on was shattered inch by inch. He was also sent flying by the tremendous force from his hand like a meteor. He was still halfway there when his body directly collapsed and exploded. He was utterly unable to endure such a terrifying attack. Run! In this world, this man already has the power of invincibility. We can't defeat him. Seeing this scene, those old monsters who were still hesitating were scared out of their wit. They also fled to the distance. It's useless. In this world, you can't escape. Lin Sun's indifferent voice was still resounding, and his figure had already disappeared. Whoosh! The void was torn apart and the white mark pierced through the sky. With unparalleled power, he instantly rushed to the front of an old monster. The old monster only had time to scream and cast a seal, but was smashed by Lin Sun's palm, and even his soul was completely crushed. In the following time, Lin Sun's figure flickered frequently, and he launched a bloody chase. Some of the old monsters that he had caught up with were filled with murderous auras and raging flames. Some of them had turned into black rainbows, while others were fighting with their lives on the line. Each of their attacks carried a terrifying force that seemed capable of destroying everything in its path. Some burned their own cultivation to the extreme, and the light of Tao was like an erupting volcano. In order to survive, they almost fought with all their strength. Unfortunately, their attacks were obliterated before they touched Lin Sun, which was no different from hitting a stone with an egg. Puff, puff, puff. As expected, those old monsters who were caught were all killed on the spot. However, those old monsters fled in all directions. When Lin Sun wanted to chase them again, he would inevitably let others escape. At this time, Lin Sun took a deep breath, and said indifferently with his dark eyes, "In this nirvana of freedom, where can you escape to?" Mastering the power of order in nirvana of freedom made Lin Sun like the ruler of this universe. The power he used just now was only the tip of the iceberg, and it was already enough to make those old monsters breathless. Devour! Lin Sun stood in the air and spread his arms, and an incomparably huge chaotic abyss suddenly appeared under the sky. At this moment, Lin Sun also displayed the ultimate combat strength after stepping into the Emperor realm in front of the world. His cultivation turned into a sky-devouring abyss, and no matter how many spells and divine powers you used, I will devour them all. Rumble! The universe shook, and the power of order that belonged to nirvana of freedom seemed to have been completely awakened. It surged from all directions, and together with the chaotic abyss, it spread in all directions. Xia Ji and Battle Emperor Feng Ling both stopped eating, and their eyes flickered. This attack seemed to be in harmony with heaven and earth, and it was using the power of the universe for its own use. It gave people the feeling that the heavens were making a move. Oh no, retreat! Seeing the appearance of the abyss, all the figures that were fleeing in all directions turned pale with fright, and their souls almost flew out of their bodies. This heavenly power definitely didn't belong to Lin Sun, but now it was being controlled by him. No! A terrified scream sounded, and the figure of an old monster that was fleeing was instantly torn apart and devoured like a bug that had been swept into a storm. Following that, cries of terror, anger, and resentment resounded from all over the area. But in the blink of an eye, the owners of those figures were engulfed by the abyss, and their bodies exploded like paper mache. Their souls were completely destroyed. In just a few seconds, only Battle Emperor Feng Ling and Xia Ji were left. They stood to the side with melons in their hands, and they couldn't believe what they had just seen. It was as if the universe had fallen into an eternal night, and it was completely engulfed by the boundless abyss. Almost all the old monsters that were fleeing had been devoured. Lin Sun had defeated all the opponents in this world by himself. Everything was gone, and the world was empty. Terrifying torrents of energy wreaked havoc like hurricanes, and the void fell into endless chaos. Lin Sun's figure stood alone, and his body emitted boundless light and majestic imperial might. It was as if he had become the sole ruler of this world. Dead, they're all dead. Battle Emperor Feng Ling was shocked out of his wits. Among those old monsters, there were old men like Battle Emperor Tsang Lu, who were at the 6th level of the Emperor realm. They were lawless and had been conquering the galaxy for many years. There was also Sword Emperor Cloudy Light, who excelled in the art of the sword. These beings that came from the heavens of the starry sky were definitely overlords in this world, and they were existences that were close to the top of the ancient orthodoxies. But now they had all been devoured. This was something that Battle Emperor Feng Ling didn't expect. Whoosh, chaotic aura filled the air, and Lin Sun's aura was withdrawn. The terrifying power of order that covered the entire sky also disappeared, and everything returned to silence. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun's face suddenly turned pale, and he couldn't help but cough out a mouthful of blood. His aura was showing signs of disorder. Lin Sun. Xia Ji rushed over immediately with a worried look in her eyes. Lin Sun had suddenly coughed up blood, and this caught her off guard. I'm fine, I'll recover after some rest. Lin Sun took a deep breath and suppressed the turbulent aura within his body. Previously, after using the Forbidden Death technique, he had already expended a great deal of energy. Coupled with the continuous battles, he, who had just stepped into the Jewing Emperor realm, was a little overwhelmed. Later on, if it wasn't for the fact that he had comprehended and mastered the power of order of nirvana, this battle might not have ended so easily. The reason why he was injured was because he had expended too much energy when controlling and using the power of order of nirvana. Let's go and heal first. Xia Ji grabbed Lin Sun's hand and rushed toward the 10,000 Paths Great Wall with him. Lin Sun didn't refuse. Although some old monsters below the 4th stage of the Emperor realm had managed to escape in this bloody battle, they were no longer a threat. Yes, let's heal first. Battle Emperor Feng Ling hurriedly chased after them. What happened just now? It seems like the power of order of nirvana has been disturbed, and it has created a destructive power that engulfed the entire battlefield. Far away, the old monsters below the 4th stage of the Emperor realm, who had escaped long ago, all felt as if they had fallen into an icy cavern, and their expressions changed uncertainly. Although they were far away, they were still able to detect the disturbance in the power of order of nirvana immediately. It was also at that time that they saw the terrifying power of order transform into a giant abyss and engulf the entire battlefield in one fell swoop. Such a terrifying and bizarre scene caused all of them to be horrified and tremble in fear. Doesn't this mean that the survivors of Fangtsuan Mountain and the others are all dead? Someone spoke with difficulty. This sentence caused everyone else to tremble again. They had also guessed this, but they didn't dare to believe it. Chapter 2287. Although the heavens and earth had returned to silence, the air was still filled with the smell of blood and destruction. The old monsters below the fourth level of the Emperor realm gathered together and looked at each other. They could see the shock and bewilderment in each other's eyes. How could a chaotic battle that could be said to be filled with blood attract the power of the Order of Nirvana of Freedom? It was too strange and abnormal. Let's wait a while. Perhaps someone will return alive, someone said uncertainly. The atmosphere was extremely oppressive. The old monsters' hearts were in turmoil. They couldn't calm down. They felt as if they were in a nightmare when they recalled everything that had happened. As Emperor Realm experts, they had experienced the vicissitudes of life and death. They were used to the impermanence of life and death. Ordinary slaughter and turmoil no longer bothered them. But everything that happened today was like an unprecedented heavy blow that shattered the confidence and dignity they were so proud of, and it overturned their understanding and imagination. No one would have thought that a young man who had just stepped into the Emperor realm would have such heaven-defying and abnormal combat strength. Even in the ancient records, there were no records of anyone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Lin Sun. This could be said to be the first of its kind in all of history. It was precisely because there had never been such a person in the past that they didn't think that their hundreds of Emperor Realm experts couldn't suppress a single person. Third-level Emperor Realm experts couldn't, fourth-level Emperor Realm experts couldn't, fifth or sixth-level Emperor Realm experts couldn't. Even besieging him wouldn't work. Not to mention emperors like them, even the other old-timers or the ancestors of emperors would find it hard to believe what they were seeing. Previously, I thought we had the advantage in numbers, and we were all Emperor Realm existences that stood above the heavens. I felt ashamed when we ganged up on a young man. After all, we've lived for so many years. If we still bully a young man with numbers, it won't look good if this gets out. Suddenly, an old antique's voice was bitter. But who would have thought that even with numbers, it wouldn't work? His words caused many people's expressions to change indeterminately. There was an indescribable sense of defeat in their hearts. So long as news of today's battle were to spread out, all of them old fellows who'd bullied the weak yet were instead killed to the point of fleeing were bound to become the greatest joke in the world. Someone had a gloomy expression as he grumbled. If it wasn't for the fact that Heavenly Emperor sure reigns supreme on this ancient path of the starry sky, I wouldn't be willing to become enemies with Heart Mountain Forest. Sigh, it's useless to say anything now. Someone let out a long sigh. Humph. What, a single Lin Daoyuan scared you out of your wits? An emperor from the divine, illuminating ancient sect snorted. Someone immediately retorted, if you're not afraid, why are you running? Since you've escaped, don't make sarcastic remarks. Aren't you ashamed? The god illuminating ancient sect's emperor's face darkened with anger, but there was nothing he could say. There was nothing he could do. He couldn't deny the fact that they had escaped. In 100,000 years, the first person to become an emperor, the first person to obtain the heritage of an immortal supreme. If this Lin Daoyuan survives, I'm afraid his achievements in the future will surpass all the other descendants of Heart Mountain Forest and become the strongest person in Heart Mountain Forest, an old monster said in a low voice. One battle emperor was able to pierce through the sky and kill the previous nameless emperor. If there's another Lin Daoyuan who's even stronger than the battle emperor, will he be the supreme person on the ancient path of the starry sky in the future? His words made everyone's chests feel tight and their hearts heavy. The previous battle had made them all deeply aware of Lin Sun's strength. No one doubted that Lin Sun's achievements in the future would be inferior to the Battle Emperor. What they truly felt was the terrifying achievements that Lin Sun would obtain in the future on the Great Path. By that time, the entire starry sky would probably have to live under his shadow. Don't worry, even if he survives this time, Heavenly Emperor Shur will definitely be the first to come after him. Do you all think that Heavenly Emperor Shur can't handle a young man who just stepped into the Emperor realm? A middle-aged monk in a black robe from the Hidden Land realm said indifferently. The hearts of many old monsters eased a little. Lin Daoyuan was the only target that Heavenly Emperor Shur had issued a bounty on. If Heavenly Emperor Shur were to know that this guy had already obtained the foundation of an immortal sovereign, how could he remain indifferent? There were also people who sneered and refuted. What a joke! In the last game of chess, no one in the world thought that the wandering ghosts of Fangtsuan Mountain could survive. But in the end, even the previous venerable Emperor Nameless was killed. And this time so many of us joined forces. At the beginning of the battle, who thought that we couldn't kill Lin Daoyuan alone? In the end, some died and some fled. Under such circumstances, who still dares to believe that Heavenly Emperor Shur can really deal with Lin Daoyuan? Aren't you worried that you'll be slapped in the face again? His words were powerful and sonorous, as if he was venting the anger in his heart. Everyone's expression was gloomy. They came from different forces in the starry sky and belonged to different camps. Some forces were even hostile to each other. At such a time, it was already very difficult for them not to directly shed all pretense of cordiality and fight. It was normal for disputes to occur. Why hasn't anyone returned until now? Suddenly, someone asked, which suddenly made those old monsters react. Only then did they realize that after waiting for a long time, no one had returned alive. This made them all have a bad premonition. Could it be that all of them had really met with misfortune? Should we go and have a look? Someone suggested. Awkwardly, no one answered. Many old monsters even rolled their eyes. Go and have a look? Don't you think you've lived long enough? Boom. The world was turned upside down. The power of order that had originally returned to silence suddenly became turbulent at this moment. This scene immediately made those Emperor Realm figures restless. They looked around in surprise, not understanding what had happened. On the Great Wall, Lin Sun, who had just begun to meditate to recover from his injuries, was also alarmed. He sensed with his heart and immediately understood what had happened. He furrowed his brows and couldn't help but sigh. Who would have thought that the remaining old dogs would have a chance to live? Xia Ji and Battle God Feng Ling both faltered, but they soon understood what had happened. They heard an emotionless voice reverberate between heaven and earth. The path of nirvana has been obtained by someone. From now on, all of you may leave. The voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth. Those panicking old monsters were all relieved, as if they had heard the most beautiful voice in the world. It was finally over. If it was possible, they would have escaped from this place as soon as possible and never wanted to return. What path of nirvana? What immortal supremacy? What were they more important than their own lives? Whoosh! A gigantic vortex gate materialized in the air. Go! Those Emperor Realm old monsters who had already lost their will to fight and only wanted to live charged forward at the first moment. They fought to be the first to leave, creating a spectacular scene. On the Great Wall, Xia Ji asked, "Should we go and kill some of them?" Lin Sun shook his head. "It's not worth it to kill some useless trash. I should wait until I recover from my injuries and pay a visit to the sects behind them." Battle God Feng Ling's heart shuddered. Visit? He was clearly going to destroy their sects. Battle God Feng Ling couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for those ancient sects when he thought back to Lin Sun's peerless might in battle. All right. Xia Ji's reply was very natural, as if she could trust and accept any decision Lin Sun made unconditionally. As she spoke, she withdrew a large spirit melon that was green like jade, and her fingers were like blades as she instantly sliced it into neat and tidy pieces before starting to enjoy it. The melon was sweet and refreshing, and its flesh was juicy and juicy. Its texture was definitely top-notch, and Xia Ji had a special liking for it. This girl really doesn't forget to eat melons no matter what, Battle God Feng Ling grumbled in his heart, but he still wore a smile on his face. Let me have a taste as well. This melon is truly unique, and can be said to be the best in the world. At the same time, in the various worlds of reincarnation, all the cultivators who had awakened their consciousness were carried away by a strange power of order and left the world they were in. Jintian Xianyue, Xian Juin, Ling Kezi, and the others were all taken away one after another. As for the cultivators who had yet to awaken their consciousness, they were selectively forgotten in the worlds of reincarnation. As for whether they would be lost in the worlds of reincarnation forever, or whether they would have a chance to walk out of reincarnation, that would depend on their own luck. It's over just like that? It's only been 7 years. Xian Jiuyin and the others returned to the nirvana of freedom, where they had come from. There was an ancient palace standing in the distance. When the cultivators below the Emperor stage returned, they received the news that the nirvana path had ended, and they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Xian Jiuyin looked around and asked quickly, some unforeseen event must have happened. Where's Lin Sun? Why didn't he appear? Young master must have left the worlds of reincarnation long ago, unlike us. We spent 7 years and still couldn't walk out of reincarnation. In the end, we were forcibly brought out. Jean Tian Xuanyue's clear eyes were suffused with a complicated expression, and her peerlessly beautiful face was filled with a sense of loss because she'd missed a chance. This cycle of reincarnation was very miraculous. I recultivated my path towards the Tao, repaired my flaws, and perfected myself. It allowed me to obtain great benefits. I believe it won't be long before I'll be able to welcome the great critical factor to attain the Tao and become an emperor. Ling Kezi had a satisfied expression, and he wasn't reluctant at all. He was a Buddhist cultivator, and he placed great emphasis on leaving it up to fate. When she spoke up to hear, Xian Jiuyin and Jintian Xianyue nodded in unison. To them, the tempering within the cycles of reincarnation this time wasn't inferior to rebirth after rebirth, and they'd obtained unexpected benefit. In the outside world, this was absolutely a supreme fortune that could only be chanced upon by luck. It wasn't just them, numerous other cultivators who'd entered the cycle of reincarnation like them had obtained various gains as well. This was the nirvana of freedom. There was only a single path to become an eternal exalt, but so long as everyone tempered within it, then they would be able to obtain the opportunity to attain rebirth. Chapter 2288. Young friend, is it time for us to leave? Battle God Feng Ling asked. He was worried that he would never be able to leave the nirvana heavens if he missed this opportunity. Lin Sun smiled. Brother, just stay here. Furthermore, if you leave now, the major forces in the starry heavens will definitely come after you. Battle God Feng Ling faltered before a desolate expression appeared on his face. I'm not afraid of death, but I didn't expect my fellow sect members to leave me in the lurch. He recalled the scene when he was isolated and helpless in battle, and his fellow disciples just stood by and watched without lifting a finger. Battle God Feng Ling laughed self-deprecatingly. I've already left the yellow celestial court anyway. It's not bad to be all alone. Lin Sun didn't try to comfort him. Let's leave this place after I recover. A 4th-level martial emperor had already experienced all kinds of trials and tribulations. Battle God Feng Ling would definitely make the most suitable choice for him. Battle God Feng Ling nodded. I wonder how Lady Xianyue and the others are doing, Lin Sun thought to himself. He calmly sensed the fluctuations of order in the nirvana heavens. Unfortunately, his control over the power of order was limited, so he couldn't sense everything in this world. Naturally, he didn't know that Xianyue and the others had already walked out of reincarnation and were about to leave this world. 2 hours later, Let's go, the whirlpool door is about to disappear. It's pointless to wait any longer. Xian Juyin glanced at Xianyue. If you really want to see Lin Sun again, just come home with me. Come home with you? Jin Tian Xuanyue's beautiful eyes widened in anger. Don't misunderstand, I wouldn't dare to steal a woman from that savage Lin Sun even if I ate a bear's heart or a leopard's gall. Xian Juyin hurriedly told her about his father's invitation to the Xian clan and made it clear that Lin Sun had already agreed. Tui. Jin Tian Xuanyue's peerlessly beautiful face that was like a painting blushed, and she spat. Who's young master's woman? Xian Juyin and Ling Kezi looked at each other and murmured inwardly. Women, do you really think men are blind? Let's go. Jintian Xianyue took the lead and walked towards the whirlpool door. Her clothes were as white as snow, and she looked like a celestial. As expected of the White Emperor Star System's #1 beauty. Such elegance, charm, and beauty are not inferior to my mother-in-law. Xian Juyin sighed with admiration in his heart. It's just a pity that Brother Lin seems to have never understood a beauty's intentions. In the future, you better not end up in a situation where you yearn for something, otherwise, that would truly be a pity. The group quickly left the nirvana of freedom. On the Great Wall, Lin Sun sat cross-legged and meditated. The beads containing the pure law of order were refined by him one by one and integrated into his cultivation. These beads were the rewards he had obtained from killing the alien beasts. Boom! Numerous strands of auspicious rays of light rained down from his body, while a myriad of strands of divine radiance descended, and they formed all sorts of miraculous and gorgeous scenes. When looked at from afar, he was like a supreme god that possessed the grand Tao. His entire body glowed, and the aura his entire body emanated faintly carried a supreme, lofty, and boundlessly supreme aura. After stepping into the Ju Emperor realm, Lin Sun was indeed completely different from before. Every move he made had the momentum to oppress the sky and overlook the mountains and rivers. Even a casual breath could cause the resonance of the Great Way and heaven and earth. As time went by, Lin Sun's figure was bathed in the endless brilliant rain of light, as if he was sitting in a sacred pure land, with intertwining lights and flowing divine brilliance. And in his body, a splendid, brilliant, and boundless world was also running. This was the Life Emperor realm, and the world was constructed by the cultivation he had mastered. Reflected in the world, it turned into the sky and the earth, the sun and the moon, the mountains and rivers, the rotation of the 4 seasons, and the changes of all things. If it were not for the lack of time and the breath of life, this Life Emperor realm would be no different from a real world. In reality, the 9th level of the Emperor realm was tempering this Life Emperor realm. This was the root of the Emperor realm, and the more magnificent and sturdy the Life Emperor realm was, the more powerful the power it could release. Lin Sun's natal imperial realm revealed an extreme scene of boundlessly magnificent, and if other emperors were to see it, their jaws would definitely drop to the ground from shock. The reason was that an ordinary first-level Emperor realm cultivator could never possess a Life Emperor realm like this. Compared to it, it was like a firefly competing with the sun and moon. Even great Emperor Juing of the Archean era could not have such a peerless aura. This was the great way that Lin Sun pursued. In the past, present, and future, there was only one Tao. And this was also the reason why Lin Sun was able to surpass a major cultivation level and defeat a 6th-level Emperor realm cultivator. Battle Emperor Feng Ling was also cultivating in silence. Xia Ji was the only one who was sleeping. Just like before, she ate and slept and ate. Her great way had always been transformed in silence and reborn in the cycle of reincarnation. She was completely different from the others. Now, in the nirvana of freedom, apart from those cultivators who had yet to awaken in the world of samsara, the 3 of them were the only ones left. In the world of darkness. It's over. Zhong Qiu's eyes were filled with gratification as he stood on the peak of a precipitous mountain. There was also a hint of indescribable sadness and frustration. Although he couldn't see the battle that had taken place in the depths of the galaxy, he could feel the appearance of his master's intent. After waiting for so long, he could finally hear the sound of flowers blooming today. So Lin Sun has already embarked on the path to becoming an immortal sovereign? She asked from the side. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his figure was like an illusion. Of course. Zhong Qiu's answer was extremely firm, and his eyes were filled with pride. Little junior brother, he is indeed slightly stronger than us senior brothers and senior sisters. His achievements in the future are destined to surpass mine and the other senior brothers and junior brothers. She glanced at him and said, "You're finally willing to admit that he's stronger than you." Zhong Qiu laughed. "I only said that he's stronger than me back then. As for now, if he wants to catch up to me, the gap is too big." Speaking of this, he took a deep breath and turned his head to ask she, "Will you continue to travel with him in the future?" She thought for a while and said, "I need to find my lost memories in the heaven-accessing secret realm." Zhong Qiu grunted in agreement. The atmosphere became a little gloomy. She didn't speak either. She had never been a person who liked to talk. In this aspect, she was similar to Zhong Qiu. After a long time, Zhong Qiu said, "That's good. With you around, at least junior brother won't be bullied." She couldn't help but sigh. "I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for me to help him in the future. Who knows, I might even need his help." In the past, Lin Sun might have been regarded as a junior who needed protection. However, after he became an emperor, things were completely different. In the starry heavens, he could be called a supreme authority, a legend on the road to becoming a great emperor. He might be very young, but who would dare to regard him as a junior? In the future, those below the emperor realm would probably have to call him senior. The legend of the past will eventually fade and wither in front of him. In the future, he will only go further and further on the great Tao, Zhong Qiu said slowly. Only he knew how supreme the path of the eternal exalt was. Even if it was placed on the other side of the starry sky, there weren't many who could be called exalted on this path. Otherwise, this nirvana of freedom's trial would not have attracted the attacks of so many terrifying figures from the starry heavens. She said, "The nirvana of freedom's end. I'm afraid Emperor Shi Tiandi will return soon." "It's too late for him to return." Zhong Qiu's eyes flashed with coldness. "It won't take long for me to go and meet that old thing personally." "How long?" she asked. "I'm just waiting for an opportunity." Zhong Qiu's eyes were deep. He had waited for the dark world for countless years and missed that game of chess. This time, he wouldn't miss it again. On this day, the nirvana of freedom's end, which attracted the attention of all the major forces on the starry heaven's ancient path, was followed by a series of explosive news. Lin Sun, the successor of Mind and Heart Mountain, has become an emperor in Juzi. He is the first person to set foot on the Juzi Emperor's path in the past 100,000 years. Mind and Heart Mountain appeared and defeated many terrifying figures from the other side of the starry heavens, helping Lin Sun to obtain the immortal supreme path. When Lin Sun became an emperor, conflicts broke out with other emperors and set off a bloody war of emperors. He killed 26 people at the first level of Emperor Realm, 15 at the second level, 8 at the third level, and 5 at the fourth level. The order of Nirvana of Freedom's order is in a strange turmoil, which is comparable to a great tribulation. All the experts in the 5th and 6th level of the Emperor Realm disappeared. No one knows whether Lin Sun will survive the tribulation. The news spread to the dark world one after another, causing a great sensation. Then, the news spread to the starry heavens at an incredible speed, setting off an unprecedented uproar. Lin Sun, a man who was ordered to be killed by heavenly monarch Shi Tiandi, the most wanted criminal in the universe, had become a monarch at the peak of Nirvana heaven. He had obtained the fortune of an immortal exalt under the eyes of many monarchs, and he had killed many monarchs alone. Every piece of news was earth-shattering. When they were spread out together, it was like thunder exploding in every world in the starry heavens. And Lin Sun had become the most dazzling person in the heavens, a legendary peerless emperor. While the commotion and discussion were still sweeping across the heavens like a landslide and a tsunami, an order from the Copper Sparrow Tower Master spread to all the places covered by the Copper Sparrow Tower. From today on, all the forces of the Copper Sparrow Tower will go into hiding. Without orders, no one is allowed to walk in the world as the Copper Sparrow Tower. Then, from this day on, all the forces under the command of the Copper Sparrow Tower began to withdraw and disappear, but compared to the great sensation caused by Lin Sun, the disappearance and silence of the forces of the Copper Sparrow Tower, one of the three dark giants, did not attract much attention. Everything was carried out in silence. Chapter 2289. Primordial World, Primitive Tao Court. The peak of the majestic True Void Mountain was the core of the prehistoric Tao Court. How is this possible? Headmaster Lu Hengtian was stunned. He had just received the news from the Dark World and felt like he was struck by lightning. He almost lost control of his mind. Battle Emperor Zonglio, a 6th-level emperor and Lu Hengtian's senior brother, was suspected to have died in nirvana. The atmosphere in the hall was oppressive. The higher-ups of the primitive Tao Court looked gloomy. Everyone's heart was in turmoil. They couldn't accept it either. This time, the primitive Tao Court sent a total of 9 emperors to Nirvana of Freedom, but 6 of them did not return, including Battle Emperor Tsang Lu, who was a 6th-tier emperor, 2 5th and 3 4th-tier emperors. The 3 who made it out alive were all in the 3rd level of the Emperor realm. This was a heavy loss. After all, the path to the other side of the starry sky had reappeared in the world after that world match, and it allowed numerous Emperor Realm old fellows to have the opportunity to head there. At that time, some old antiques from the primitive Tao Court also left. There were only about 20 old emperors left, but now they had lost 6 of them. This was a heavy blow. It was hard to accept. The primitive Tao Court was one of the 6 great Tao Courts. It was powerful and ancient, but now it had suffered such a heavy loss. It was obvious that the losses suffered by those powers that participated in the Nirvana of Freedom were bound to be huge. A wanted survivor of Mount Heart is becoming a great emperor in Nirvana and obtaining the path to the immortal sovereign. Heaven is blind. Lu Hengtian was furious. His face was pale. He hadn't lost control of himself like this for many years. Sect Master, this kid has already matured. According to the information we received, he can go against a 6th-level Martial Emperor when he just stepped into the Martial Emperor realm. If he's still alive, he's bound to be a great threat to us. Someone said in a low voice. From the news from the Dark World, no one dared to say whether Lin Sun was dead or alive. This was what worried them. If he is alive, doesn't that mean senior brother Zonglio has a chance to be alive? Someone could not help but ask. Someone immediately said, it's hard to say. Lin Sun was able to obtain the fortune of the Immortal Supreme. How could he be erased by Nirvana? But senior brother Tsang Lu and the rest. He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone knew what it meant. Headmaster, no matter what, we should make a plan in advance. Given the hatred between us and Fangsuan Mountain, and the fact that we've acted against Lin Sun many times over the years, if he walks out of the Nirvana of Freedom alive, he will definitely not let us off. Someone said worriedly. The information that came from that place said that this kid once said in Rebirth of Freedom that he would one day ascend to the starry sky and pay a visit to all of his enemies. This made everyone's hearts shake. A young man who had stepped into the Emperor realm and had the potential to become an undying being, if he decided to take revenge, the consequences would be dire. What a joke! There are many orthodoxies in the starry skies. He's just a remnant of Mount Fangsuan. Does he really think that he can do whatever he wants after stepping into the Ju Di realm? Someone sneered. Alas, who would dare believe that the tiny ant that we didn't take seriously all those years ago actually possesses the potential to threaten us now? Someone's voice was full of sadness. This was really hard to accept. In the past, although Lin Sun was famous in the starry sky, which ancient orthodoxy would really pay attention to him? Who would have thought that such a little thing would one day threaten them? Don't forget, Emperor Shi Tiandi is still here. Suddenly, someone said, Lin Sun is wanted by Emperor Shi Tiandi. If Emperor Shi Tiandi knew that Lin Sun had risen to such a level, how could he stand by and do nothing? These words made everyone's eyes light up. Finally, Lu Hengtian took a deep breath and made a decision. We can't pin all our hopes on Emperor Shi Tiandi. From today on, we'll try our best to find out the news related to Lin Sun. If he's dead, I want to know where he died. If he's alive, we'll keep an eye on his every move. On this day, the primitive Taoist court was shocked. Like the primitive Taoist court, Qiankuan, Panwu, demons, Xianwang and other ancient Taoist courts, the 10 war clans and some primordial emperor clans also received the news one after another. For a while, they were all shocked. There was disbelief, resentment, panic, and depression. Lin Sun. This name, which had long been familiar to them, now seemed to have a heart-palpitating shadow over every major force. As time went by, the entire starry sky ancient path was completely boiling. Almost every world and every city was talking about the same name, Daoyuan Emperor Lin Sun, a legend like the sun, shining alone in the starry sky. It's only been a few years, but he has already set foot on the Juing Emperor realm. Good, good. Ziheng Star Zone, Du World, Yu Clan. When he heard the news about Lin Sun, Yu Qingyang Saber Emperor couldn't help laughing, his voice shaking the sky. When Lin Sun first entered the starry sky ancient path, Yu Qingyang had been blessed by Yu Qingyang and gave Lin Sun the 9 cauldrons world-suppressing scripture. My little friend, I don't expect you to repay me in the future. I just hope that one day you can come back to see me and let me appreciate the elegance of Juing Emperor Yu Qingyang sighed. Peerless Emperor. The weight of these 4 words overwhelmed how many emperors in the past and present? White Emperor Star Zone, Golden Heaven World. Primordial Imperial Clan, Jintian Clan. When the news about Nirvana Heaven spread, everyone in the Jintian clan was shocked. However, everyone had a strange expression on their faces and the atmosphere was strange. The reason was that they had long known that the number 1 beauty of the White Monarch Starfield, Jin Tian Xianyue, the leader of the younger generation of the Jintian clan, had become Lin De Yuan's Dao servant. This was unacceptable to the entire clan. Many even felt humiliated. If it weren't for Sword Emperor Fufeng, the higher-ups of the Jintian clan would have gone to Lin Sun to settle the score and bring Jintian Xianyue back. Especially 7 years ago, when they learned that Jintian Xianyue would rather give up her surname and sever ties with the clan in order to stay by Lin Sun's side, the entire clan was enraged. Many clamored to capture Jintian Xianyue and punish her severely. But who would have thought that after only 7 years, the descendant of Mount Fangsuan that they didn't think highly of would become a martial monarch and obtain the immortal supremacy. Furthermore, he had single-handedly defeated a group of Emperor Realm monsters from the starry heavens. Now, he was the famous Dao Yuan monarch, a peerless martial monarch that even the ancient orthodoxies were wary of. This shocked the entire Jintian clan. At the same time, they couldn't help but feel strange and subtle emotions. Those clamoring to capture Jintian Xianyue and punish her were silenced. Who had the guts to snatch someone by Dao Yuan monarch's side? Even if that person was a direct descendant of the Jintian clan. Xianyue isn't young anymore. It's time for her to pursue her own Dao. From now on, no one is allowed to slander and attack Xianyue behind her back. On this day, the Jintian clan's clan master issued an order. His attitude was firm and no one in the clan dared to object. After Sword Emperor Fufeng learned of this, he couldn't help but think, If Heavenly Monarch Sure was defeated in the future, wouldn't Lin soon be the ruler of the Galaxy Ancient Road? At that time, with the relationship between Xianwei and Lin Sun, the status of the Jintian clan would also rise. Thinking of this, Sword Emperor Fufeng couldn't help but feel excited. But he quickly calmed down because he knew that as long as Heavenly Monarch Sure was alive, he was destined to be the biggest threat to Lin Sun. The Galaxy Ancient Road had 9 major starfields. Each starfield had many worlds of different sizes. It was incomparably vast and boundless. In these worlds there were geniuses who could shine brilliantly in a city, some could dominate a region, and some could reign supreme in a world, and some could be the best in a starfield. There were countless people like this on the boundless ancient path of the starry sky. They were all geniuses of their respective worlds and domains. But when placed in the entire world, they seemed insignificant. Since the ancient times, those who were able to spread their names throughout the starry ancient path were extremely rare existences. After all, the Galaxy Ancient Road was too big. But recently, the name of Tao Abyss Emperor Lin Sun had spread across every world, every territory, and every city of the Galaxy Ancient Road. This was the influence of becoming an emperor at the peak and obtaining the immortal supreme fortune in Nirvana Heaven. This was a supreme legend created by Lin Sun alone. Since ancient times, only one person had heard of it. When they learned of this news, Xian Zhuyin, Xianwei, and Ling Kezi felt like they were in a dream. It took them a long time to believe all this, and their emotions were also extremely agitated. As for Mi Wuya, Ling Hongzhuang, and the others who used to be on the same level as Lin Sun, they were all shocked speechless. Not to mention jealousy, they didn't even have the heart to envy. They only felt an indescribable bitterness and helplessness. To be a genius of the same generation as Lin Sun is destined to be the most unfortunate thing since ancient times. Many people sighed with emotion. Right now, Lin Sun had surpassed the dazzling figures of the younger generation. In the future, as long as he was alive, with his terrifying foundation and potential, he was destined to surpass those supreme figures of the older generation. In other words, since the ancient times until now, all the cultivators in the universe who were at the same realm of cultivation as him were bound to be overshadowed by his brilliance. Similarly, after all the cultivators in the Galaxy Ancient Road calmed down, they all thought of a question at the same time. Was Tao Abyss Emperor Lin Sun still alive? Chapter 2290. Nirvana? The Sky of Freedom. On the Great Wall. As Lin Sun breathed in and out, the stars in the distance, the Great Wall beneath him, and the Nirvana behind him. The Sky of Freedom produced a unique and powerful rhythm. Boom, 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 just the rhythm alone was like the thunder of the heavenly Tao, shaking the void and spreading in all directions. At the same time, Lin Sun's body glowed brilliantly and the strange power of order rolled like a tide. He was like the ruler of the heavens, exuding supreme might. What is Lin Sun doing? Battle Monarch Feng Ling was already standing far away. He was circulating all the energy in his body in order to resist and dissolve the omnipresent terrifying pressure. It had already been 10 days. Lin Sun had been meditating this entire time, and the aura around him had become more and more terrifying. He is comprehending and controlling the power of order of this world. Xia Zhi's clothes fluttered in the wind, and her voice was as melodious as the sound of nature. He isn't planning to refine this world, is he? Battle Monarch Feng Ling's heart trembled, and he drew in a sharp breath. The Sky of Freedom was formed from the power of order of the starry sky. If the Nirvana was refined by the Sky of Freedom, wouldn't it be the same as refining the power of order of the starry sky? Xia Zhi thought about it and said, the fact that he can do this should have something to do with the immortal supremacy. Her guess was correct. The immemorial tribulation of oblivion, and a single lotus bloomed. Since the ancient times until now, an eternal path to exalt had finally appeared, so it was naturally impossible for it to be so simple. When Lin Sun obtained the fortune of the immortal supremacy path, he also became the nirvana, the only lotus in the sky of freedom. As for the nirvana, the power of order of the sky of freedom was like the nourishment of the lotus, and it could be absorbed and controlled by Lin Sun in the first place. In these 10 days, Lin Sun's injuries and physical strength had already recovered, and his martial emperor cultivation had also been consolidated. What he was doing now was to completely control the nirvana, the power of order of the sky of freedom. Battle Monarch Feng Ling suddenly exclaimed, "If he can really do this, doesn't that mean he is no different from Shi Tiandi, who can control the forbidden power of order?" This was truly shocking. At the same time, the entire nirvana appeared in Lin Sun's mind. The scene of the realm of freedom. The entire world was composed of the reincarnation Tao Palace, the Great Wall of 10,000 Paths, and the undying wasteland. There was no need to mention the Great Wall. The everlasting wasteland was the place where Lin Sun had fought with the group of emperors 10 days ago. It was about the size of a small world, and was constructed from the order of the starry sky. And nirvana? The core of the sky of freedom was the reincarnation Tao Palace. After entering this Taoist palace, one could enter the world of samsara, which was divided into 8 realms: Zhenwu, Gang Spirit, Spirit Sea, Cave, Reincarnation Development, King Realm, Sage Realm, and Quasi-Emperor. It was called the world of samsara, yet it was actually not much different from the various worlds on the ancient paths in the starry sky. The energy of the order of time and the fluctuations of life flowed within it. It was precisely because of the existence of time and life that the world of reincarnation was fundamentally different from the natal emperor realm of a martial emperor. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun finally dared to confirm that those lives distributed in the world of samsara were not illusions, but real existences. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was about to reach nirvana. The order energy of the sky of freedom had been refined, but it was unable to comprehend the core mysteries of the samsara Tao Palace. The reason was very simple. The order of samsara involved the energy of time and life. It was the same as Lin Sun's forbidden passing, which also involved the order of time. However, it could only be used by Lin Sun, and could not be used to pry into the core mysteries contained within. This was known as knowing the how, but not knowing the why. No wonder Emperor Shi Tiandi is said to be like the ruler of all heavens in the starry sky. Under the cover of the forbidden order energy he controls, he is equivalent to the master of that world. Lin Sun was enlightened. Similarly, I was able to kill those old monsters in the 5th and 6th level of the martial emperor realm a few days ago, because I have mastered the power of the nirvana, the order energy of the sky of freedom. In this world, I can also act on behalf of heaven and enforce justice on behalf of heaven. Enforce justice on behalf of heaven. 4 simple words, but the power contained in them was enough to make any cultivator in this world terrified. After a long time, Lin Sun opened his eyes from the enlightenment, and the endless rain of light that lingered around him became silent and restrained within his body. He stood up, his clothes neat and tidy, his aura indifferent and his figure outstanding. There was no longer that supreme and terrifying martial emperor aura. The great Tao is the simplest, returning to simplicity. Battle Emperor Feng Ling sighed with emotion. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, who would have thought that this young man in front of him was the first terrifying existence to become a martial emperor in the last 100,000 years? Lin Sun, when are we leaving? Xie asked. Without fighting and killing, she only had to eat and sleep these days, which was quite boring. Wait a moment. Lin Sun said and took a step forward, and his figure disappeared. True martial world. In the imperial palace of the great Qian dynasty. Qian Yulio, dressed in a lavender dress, failed to break through the realm again, and a touch of confusion appeared on her delicate oval face. When Su Qinghan left, she had given her a cultivation method related to breaking through the martial realm and cultivating to the gang spirit realm. For the past 7 years, she had been trying to break through the realm, but in return, she had failed thousands of times. The barrier of true martial was like a natural moat, and she was about to collapse. "Why don't you try again?" Suddenly, a voice sounded in Qian Yulio's almost desperate heart, making her sit up as if she had been electrocuted, and her pretty face lit up with amazing brilliance. "Child, is that you?" Qian Yulio's voice was trembling with excitement. After 7 years, she finally heard that familiar voice again. However, no one answered. The excitement on Qian Yulio's face suddenly dissipated a lot. Looking at the empty palace, she couldn't help laughing at herself. It turned out to be an illusion. Fine, then I'll try again. After a long time, she regained her spirit, operated her cultivation, and began to try to break through the realm again. Boom! Suddenly, it was as if a shackle within her body had been broken, and before Qian Yulio could react in time, the spirit energy in her body rumbled and surged within her body like a torrent, and an indescribably wonderful feeling surged into her heart. At this moment, it was as if a door to a whole new world had opened in front of her, and Qian Yulio couldn't help but be stunned. Did she succeed? After a long time, she felt a pond of spiritual power emerging in her body and the new mystery of the gang's spirit realm. Finally, she dared to confirm that she had broken through the realm. All this happened so abruptly as if it didn't take much effort at all. But Qian Yulio seemed to realize something, and she suddenly stood up and pushed open the door of the palace. The huge imperial palace came into view, and there was no figure in front of the hall. But Qian Yulio saw a letter floating down from the crack of the door. Holding it in her hand, she forced herself to restrain the surging emotions in her heart and began to read. "The world is very big, and the path of cultivation is very long. From today onwards, the beautiful mountains and rivers and the great way are no longer shackles. I look forward to the day when you walk out of the world of samsara." Signed, Lin Daoyuan. Sure enough, it's him. Qian Yulio clenched the letter in her hand tightly, and her beautiful eyes bloomed with brilliant splendor. It turns out that he's called Lin Daoyuan. A smile quietly appeared on the corners of her mouth, and Qian Yulio took a deep breath and carefully put away the letter. Then, she said softly to the empty world, "Thank you, child Lin." Above the sky, Lin Sun smiled and turned to leave. On this day, the martial mountain of the true martial world, the spirit gang lake of the spirit gang world, the spirit sea of the spirit sea world, and the glittering paradise of the paradise world in the 8 realms of samsara, all the forbidden areas covered by the power of order disappeared from those different worlds. On this day there was a wonderful communication between the 8 realms. Anyone who broke through the realm would be moved to a higher level world to cultivate. On this day, a strange connection was formed between the 8 worlds. Anyone who broke through would be transported to a higher level world to cultivate. For example, those who broke through the realm in the true martial world would be moved to the spirit gang world, and so on. All the practitioners distributed in the 8 realms were shocked, overjoyed, excited, and cheered. This day was also called the first day of the new era of cultivation in the 8 realms. Also on this day, the practitioners who hadn't awakened in the world of samsara would never be able to awaken in this life. Of course, this was Lin Sun's doing. This world of samsara was already under his control, so he naturally wouldn't allow an anomaly to appear. "We can go." Lin Sun returned to the Great Wall of 10,000 Paths and said with a smile. Immediately, he drew a line with his fingers and a vortex door appeared. Then, he walked out with Xia Ji and Battle Emperor Feng Ling. As Lin Sun left the enormous nirvana, freedom of heaven suddenly turned into a lotus-shaped mark and appeared in the lines on Lin Sun's palm before disappearing. Feeling the nirvana, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh in his heart. 7 years ago, he was a great perfection quasi-emperor and was still a junior in the eyes of the old monsters in the emperor realm. 7 years later, He was already a peerless great emperor with the foundation of the immortal supreme and the power of nirvana? The order of freedom of heaven. From now on, Lin Sun's great Tao could compete with the emperors in the past and present. He's back, he's back. In the dark, the eyes of the drunkard battle emperor Sky Destruction lit up when he saw Lin Sun's figure walking over from the distant sky. This kid really didn't die. I knew it, good people don't live long, but scourges live for 1,000 years. Big Yellow grinned from the side. Big Yellow, watch your words. Young Master Lin is now the famous Tao Abyss Emperor, a true peerless great emperor. Qing Ying held the blood-red umbrella and spoke unhurriedly. Her graceful figure revealed a soul-stirring and enchanting beauty. They had already waited here for many days. Now that Lin Sun had finally walked out alive, they all secretly heaved a sigh of relief. One had to know that according to the rumors in the outside world, Lin Sun's situation was still unknown. Master is here too. Big Yellow's ears twitched and he turned around to see Zhong Qiu's majestic figure appear out of thin air. He let out a howl and rushed forward excitedly. He stretched out his head and wanted to rub against his master's leg just like he had done countless times in the past. However, in the next moment, he was kicked out by Zhong Qiu. Don't block my way. Bam! Big Yellow fell flat on his face and was dumbfounded. The drunkard and Qing Ying couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 2291. Being laughed at, Goldie's face darkened. He bared his teeth and wanted to bite Lin Sun. At that moment, Zhong Qiu suddenly said, "Junior brother, take this." Boom. Whether Lin Sun agreed or not, he punched out with a simple, direct, and unparalleled momentum. It did not cause any ripples in the void. In reality, the strength of this punch had been condensed to the extreme a long time ago, and it had attained an inconceivable level. In Lin Sun's eyes, this punch was invisible, powerful, and indescribable. It seemed to be simple, yet it existed everywhere. The soul, state of mind, body, and even every single thought was enveloped by this punch. This was undoubtedly extremely terrifying. But Lin Sun didn't dodge. He took a deep breath and punched out. His punch was chaotic and extremely simple. At this instant, Xia Ji, battle god Feng Ling, the drunkard, De Huang, Qing Ying, and the others all held their breaths as their attention was drawn to this scene. A strange scene appeared. When the two fists collided, there was no sound and no ripples were created. There was also no earth-shattering rumble. But Lin Sun's figure shook slightly, and he couldn't help but be surprised. Great sound desolate. In the distance, Zhong Qiu took a few steps back. He seemed to be at a disadvantage, but he laughed loudly. Strictly speaking, it should be called an invisible elephant. Senior brother, thank you for letting me win. Lin Sun's figure floated to the ground and cupped his hands with a smile. Zhong Qiu stepped forward, patted Lin Sun on the shoulder, and said with emotion, "My previous punch contained the power of the first level of the Emperor Realm. Obviously, if I were at the first level of the Emperor Realm, I wouldn't be as powerful as you. Let's go. Let us brothers have a private chat." Zhong Qiu put his arm around Lin Sun's shoulder and moved away. Only battle god Feng Ling, Xia Ji, and the drunkard were left. They all stared at one another in bewilderment. On the other hand, Big Yellow looked like it was abandoned, and it looked resentful. The drunkard was the first to break the silence. He smiled and said, "I am Battle Emperor Heavenly Destruction. This is Lady Qing Ying, and this must be Battle Emperor Feng Ling of the Black-Yellow Heavenly Court." As he spoke, he looked at Xia Ji curiously. A few days ago, there was also news related to this black-robed woman. It was said that she was invincible on the starry sky ancient path, and her battle prowess was extremely terrifying. Even the Emperor Realm experts were afraid of her. Battle god Feng Ling hurriedly replied, "That's me. This is Miss Xia Ji." Everyone chatted for a while and soon became familiar with each other. However, Xia Ji was very quiet and her temperament was as cold as snow. But soon, everyone got used to it. Together with Qing Ying, they walked towards the distant hall. Motherf asterisk Kerr, it's fine if he didn't introduce me, but he didn't even greet me when he left. He's clearly looking down on me. Big Yellow, who had been waiting to be introduced, and greeted, squatted alone. It gritted its teeth and looked sad and indignant. Along the way, Battle God Feng Ling found out that Lin Sun's second senior brother, Zhong Qiu, was the Copper Sparrow Pavilion Master, one of the 3 Dark Hand Lords. He couldn't believe it no matter how hard he tried. The Copper Sparrow Pavilion Master, who was regarded as the most arrogant person in the heavens and had once refused to meet Shi Tiandi, was actually from the same sect as Lin Sun. If word of this got out, would all the major forces in the heavens be able to sit still? Lin Sun's return did not attract any attention from the outside world. Because this was the land of darkness, the territory of the hidden mist house. In the hall, as soon as Lin Sun sat down, Zhong Qiu asked, "Where did Master go?" Lin Sun was startled. After thinking for a while, he told Zhong Qiu about the supreme battle that took place in the depths of the starry sky. When Zhong Qiu heard about the myriad transformation spear, the sky-splitting axe, the deity-slaying sword, and the Armageddon that represented the 4 immortal clans, an undisguised killing intent appeared in Zhong Qiu's eyes. "When I go to the Nirvana realm in the future, I'll settle the scores with these clans." When Lin Sun mentioned the young man named Kong Ju, who had suffered a mental tribulation, Zhong Qiu's eyes flickered, and he showed a thoughtful expression. With a swallowing gourd hanging around his waist, he walked on the Great Way, went through 18 tribulations before his death, and achieved immortality after his death. It turns out to be him. Speaking of which, we, the successors of Fang Xiyuan, should indeed call him Martial Uncle. There was a trace of emotion in Zhong Qiu's eyes. How could he not know that person was regarded as the first leader to go to the Nirvana realm in primitive times? But he didn't expect that such a person would encounter such a strange and terrible mental tribulation. "Master said that when I go to the Nirvana realm in the future, I should bring Martial Uncle Kong Ju back," said Lin Sun. Zhong Qiu nodded and said, "That's right. If the mental tribulation is not eliminated, he will definitely be schemed and used by others." "Where is Master?" He couldn't help asking. "I don't know." Lin Sun shook his head and told him about the disappearance of Fang Xiyuan's mind and Taoist form. "Didn't Master say where his original body went?" Zhong Qiu was stunned. Lin Sun shook his head. Zhong Qiu couldn't help sighing after a while. "Yes, Master would have told me long ago if he wanted to. Since he didn't say it, there must be a reason." Next, the two talked about Nirvana realm. Things about Freedom Heaven. From Zhong Qiu's words, Lin Sun finally confirmed that the good fortune of becoming an emperor and ancestor was the Taoist form left by Master in the pattern of slanting moon and 3 stars. In other words, this fortuitous encounter was not an inheritance, nor was it a fortuitous encounter. It was the will of the Master of the core dimension. It was to protect Lin Sun when he became an emperor. Zhong Qiu said with a smile, "That's why I gave you so many tests when I found out that you've obtained the Tristar and Slanting Moon diagram. It was all for the sake of seeing exactly what ability the person I, Zhong Qiu, have been waiting for countless years to be acknowledged by my master." "Is Master satisfied now?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. Zhong Qiu laughed and said, "From now on, I will be proud of you, junior brother." They chatted for a long time, mostly about Zhong Qiu's advice to Lin Sun. As a person who had become an emperor in primitive times, Zhong Qiu's cultivation experience was naturally very rich. Lin Sun soon learned that there were 9 levels in the emperor realm, and each level was a natural moat. The first 3 levels were karma obstacles, regarded as Emperor's Heart obstacles. Once this obstacle was broken, both body and mind could be turned into a boundary. From the 4th to the 6th level, there was a difficulty called confinement difficulty. To break this confinement, there was no heaven. From the 7th to the 9th level, There was a tribulation called ancestral reversion tribulation. When one became an emperor, he or she would become an emperor. These obstacles, difficulties, and tribulations were the three watersheds on the road of Emperor Realm. If one crossed them, his or her combat power would be reborn, and he or she would have completely different power and strength from before. If one couldn't cross them, he or she would either stop here or die. This was the 9-level natural moat on the road of Emperor Realm. 3 levels were obstacles, 6 levels were difficulties, and 9 levels were tribulations. The law of Emperor Realm was to comprehend and control the most essential mysteries of the Great Way. The more profound the law of Emperor Realm was, the faster one would go on the road of Emperor Realm. Zhongqiu specially reminded Lin Sun that if he wanted to go further on the road of Emperor Realm, he should create his own Tao Sutra and forge a matching Emperor weapon of Tao. This was the so-called Saint Tao Sutra, Emperor Realm Sutra. In the Saint Tao Sutra, one should create Tao Sutra. In the Emperor Realm, one should compose his or her own Tao Sutra. Tao Sutra and Tao Sutra were worlds apart from each other. Lin Sun couldn't help but think of the Great Way Furnace Sutra he created. Strictly speaking, it should be a Saint Tao Sutra, not a complete Emperor Sutra. At the same time, Lin Sun began to think seriously. If he perfected the Great Way Furnace Sutra into his own Emperor Sutra, how should he forge a matching Emperor weapon of Tao Sutra? The so-called Emperor weapon was a treasure of Emperor Realm closely related to his own Tao. When he was in the Saint Tao Sutra, Lin Sun cultivated the broken blade into his own saint weapon. But now it was obviously not suitable. First, he was already a peerless great emperor, and his Tao was no longer comparable to before. Second, Lin Sun had long discovered that there was a spirit in the broken blade, which was destined to be not suitable to be used to forge his own emperor weapon of Tao Sutra. After thinking about it, Lin Sun suddenly found that although he had a lot of treasures, it seemed that none of them really belonged to him and were completely compatible with his Tao. Seeing Lin Sun lost in thought for a long time, Zhongqiu couldn't help but say, "Don't worry. It's not difficult for you to write the Tao Sutra or forge the Emperor weapon of Tao Sutra with your foundation." Lin Sun nodded. "Next, I want to talk to you about an important thing." Zhongqiu looked serious. "Junior brother, do you know who can really threaten us on the ancient way of starry sky?" Lin Sun was shocked and said without hesitation, "Emperor Shi Tiandi." Zhongqiu nodded and said, "In addition to him, there is a woman named Yan Xing. Although the former Emperor Nameless was killed by you, a wisp of his remnant soul survived and was saved by Yan Xing. If this old thing recovers, he will definitely be a big threat." Lin Sun was clear about this matter. After the game of chess, he went to Shinji Daoist sect, intending to inquire about the way to the true dragon's lair. When he arrived at Shinji Daoist sect, he found that this ancient orthodoxy had long been empty. But it was also at that time that he saw the purple-robed woman, Yan Xing, and also saw the former Emperor Nameless, who only had a wisp of his remnant soul left. Yan Xing called this person, Ninth Granduncle. At that time, Yan Xing went to Shinji Daoist sect to inquire about the way to the true dragon's lair. This made Lin Sun very doubtful at that time that his mother was Luo Qin. Or Master Lu was probably hiding in the true dragon's lair. Otherwise, it was impossible for Yan Xing to inquire about the true dragon's lair for no reason. It was also because of this suspicion that Lin Sun took the initiative to expose his whereabouts at that time to attract Yan Xing's attention. Finally, when they reached the Dark World, it was she who made a move and had a confrontation with Yan Xing. From then on, Lin Sun and she were separated, and they hadn't seen each other until now. Lin Sun only knew that she was saved by his second senior brother, and Yan Xing survived. It was said that he went to find Emperor Shi Tiandi for help. Just as Lin Sun was thinking, he heard Zhongqiu say, "Recently, I have received news that Yan Xing is very likely to go to the true dragon's lair." Chapter 2292. The first thought that came to Lin Sun's mind was that this star trader was definitely up to no good by going to the true dragon lair this time. Different from Shi Tiandi, this star trader came to the ancient path of starry sky a long time ago to hunt down his mother and Lu Boya. This pursuit had lasted for countless years. If it were someone else, they would have given up long ago, but this star trader was so persistent that she hadn't given up until now. When she learned that Lin Sun was a descendant of Luo Qingxuan, she chose to attack him without hesitation. If she hadn't stopped her, the consequences would have been unimaginable. "Senior brother, is the news true?" Lin Sun asked with a frown. "The news came from Ancestor Chan Tuesday. Although this old guy is a little strange, he doesn't dare to joke about this," Zhong Qiu said. Zhong Qiu said, "Junior apprentice brother, I suspect that planet Spill went to the true dragon's lair for the ancestral dragon's treasured blood. This blood is the most precious treasure of the true dragon bloodline. If planet Spill obtained it, it would be enough to restore the nameless Empyrean's remnant soul in the shortest amount of time possible." Precious blood of the ancestral dragon. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. "Senior brother, I have another doubt. I'm afraid the purpose of this woman going to the true dragon lair is not so simple." Speaking of this, he made a decision. "So, I want to go and have a look myself." "This is what I want to talk to you about," Zhong Qiu said. Zhong Qiu said, "Leave Shi Tiandi to me. Junior brother, your mission is to kill this star destroyer. Even if you can't kill her completely, you have to completely erase Venerable Sovereign Nameless Remnant's soul to prevent any future troubles." Lin Sun agreed readily. He had long wanted to go to the true dragon world. After all, he hadn't seen Zhao Jingxian for many years. The true dragon, like the immortal phoenix, the black tortoise, and the white tiger, is one of the four great primordial spirit clans born in the chaos at the beginning of primitive times. They are regarded as the best of all spirits, Zhong Qiu said in a low voice. However, at the beginning of primitive times, the four great primordial spirit clans migrated from the ancient path of starry sky. For countless years, people only knew of the existence of the true dragon world, the immortal phoenix nest, the black tortoise continent, and the white tiger divine mountain. However, very few people knew the exact location of their residences. If you want to go to the Zhenlong world, you can go to the Xian clan to ask for information. The Xian clan is an ancient emperor clan. At the beginning of the ancient immemorial era, they controlled the Chaos Treasure, the mysterious God Treasure Mirror. Moreover, their ancestors had countless connections with the Zhenlong world. With the help of the Xian clan, you will definitely be able to find the path to the true dragon world. As Zhong Qiu spoke, he took out a sealed letter and said, "Junior brother, take this letter and look for the head of the Xian family, Xian Shangchen. This old fellow owes me a favor, and it's time for him to repay it." Xian family. Xian Shangchen. Lin Sun's eyes lit up. He didn't forget that on the first day he entered Nirvana Heaven, Xian Jiuyin had invited him to Xian family as a guest. Lin Sun put away the letter and suddenly remembered something. He asked, "Senior brother, are you going to deal with Shi Tiandi?" Zhong Qiu said, "Nirvana Heaven has come to an end. I've been guarding this place for countless years, and I've waited for a satisfactory result. Of course, I won't stay here any longer. If I want to go to the other side of the starry sky, I'll have to kill Shi Tiandi first." His tone was casual and flat. "Senior brother, are you confident?" Lin Sun couldn't help but worry. Shi Tiandi was an existence stronger than the nameless Supreme Emperor. Zhong Qiu blinked his eyes and said, "Junior brother, I need your help. Why don't you help me?" Lin Sun smiled bitterly and said, "Senior brother, Buzhou Mountain has been taken away by senior sister Ruosu. What else do you think I can do?" Zhong Qiu smiled and said, "Junior brother, don't belittle yourself. I've waited for so many years not only to witness you blossom into a lotus, but also to wait for an opportunity. And this opportunity is now in your hands." Lin Sun's eyes lit up. The order power of Nirvana Heaven? Zhong Qiu nodded. The order power of Nirvana Heaven is the origin order of the ancient path of the starry sky. It's enough to resist and contend against the forbidden order power from the other side. As long as I can do this, how can that old bastard Shi Tiandi fight me with just his own combat strength? There was a hint of disdain in his voice at the end. After all, the real threat to him was the forbidden order power. As for how strong Shi Tiandi's cultivation was, Zhong Qiu really didn't care. Lin Sun turned his palm over, and a nirvana lotus pattern emerged, flowing with the mysterious fluctuation of the law of order. Zhong Qiu's eyes burst with divine brilliance as he stared at the pattern and said with emotion, "The origin order power that I've been waiting for so long has finally appeared. It's really extraordinary. Please take it, senior brother." Lin Sun handed over the nirvana lotus pattern without hesitation. With a solemn expression, Zhong Qiu took out a cauldron and put away the nirvana lotus pattern. Then, he made a gesture with both hands and sealed the cauldron thousands of times before he heaved a sigh of relief. The order power of the starry sky is incomparably powerful. Even with my strength, it'll take me some time to try to use it. Zhong Qiu pondered and said, "From today on, I'll go into closed-door training for a period of time, at least 3 to 5 years, at most 10 years. Junior brother, please take care of yourself during this period." Lin Sun nodded. The next morning, Zhong Qiu left the secret place with Lin Sun, Xia Ji, Qing Ying, Goldie, and the others. In the secret realm, Lin Sun saw Shi, who he hadn't seen for a long time. She was as cold as snow, graceful and outstanding as before. "If you hadn't come back, I would have gone to look for you," said she. Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands. "I've made you worry, senior." She nodded and looked at Zhong Qiu, saying, "Thank you for taking care of me these days. I hope you can defeat Shi Tiandi when we meet again." Zhong Qiu smiled and said, "I'll wait and see." She didn't say anything more. She turned into a ray of light rain and returned to the heaven-accessing secret land. For her, the heaven-accessing secret land had long since become an existence like her home. "Goldie, from today on, you'll follow my junior brother and listen to his orders. Remember, you have to listen to his orders in all actions. Don't make trouble." Zhong Qiu looked at Goldie and said gently. Goldie was obviously very unhappy. He glared at Lin Sun. How could an existence like Lin Sun listen to a little guy like him? However, when Goldie met Zhong Qiu's calm gaze, he immediately became timid. He nodded listlessly, his eyes full of hidden bitterness. Lin Sun was also stunned. He had never expected that his second senior brother would let this dog follow him. Lin Sun felt a headache when he thought of this dog's arrogant and domineering attitude. Zhong Qiu smiled and said, "Don't underestimate Big Yellow just because he's a dog. Ordinary monarchs are no match for him. Strictly speaking, Big Yellow has been by my side since I was young. If it wasn't for the fact that he's unwilling to leave me, he could have established his own orthodoxy and become his own monarch." Zhong Qiu was young. It was the primitive times, not to mention a dog, even an insect that cultivated with Zhong Qiu and was able to survive until now was bound to be an extremely terrifying existence. Hearing Zhong Qiu's praise, Goldie raised his head proudly and squinted at Lin Sun with a look that said, "Boy, you finally know how great I am." Lin Sun's lips twitched. He covered his forehead and sighed softly, "Alas, as long as he doesn't make trouble for me." Goldie was annoyed at once. He bared his teeth and looked at Lin Sun gloomily. But in the end, he held back because of Zhong Qiu. He had no choice. After all, Lin Sun was his master's junior brother. If it were someone else, he would bite him to death first. At this time, Zhong Qiu looked at Qing Ying again and said softly, "Qing Ying, from today on, you will stay here to cultivate. Don't refuse this time. When Formation Emperor Lu left, he told me to take care of you. As you can see, my junior brother has become an emperor. If you really want to repay Formation Emperor Lu's kindness, you can't do it without great power. The origin of Qing Ying was very mysterious. Even Zhong Qiu only knew that she was brought back by Formation Emperor Lu and raised by him. But Zhong Qiu knew clearly that Qing Ying's foundation and talent were absolutely rare. She was definitely not weaker than his junior brother. Unfortunately, she had been in no mood to cultivate. She had been sitting in the dark all the time. All she wanted to do was to take care of the hidden mist house and live up to Formation Emperor Lu's kindness. Otherwise, with her talent, she could have become an emperor many years ago. Yes, become an emperor. This was also the reason why Zhong Qiu was surprised. He really didn't know where Formation Emperor Lu found such an enchanting baby girl. Qing Ying originally intended to refuse, but after looking at Lin Sun, she finally nodded. Lin Sun was brought up by Formation Emperor Lu. In her heart, Lin Sun was like her younger brother. If she didn't have enough power, it would be difficult for her to help him in the future. Lin Sun also clearly felt that Qing Ying treated him with unusual affinity and kindness. It was like the spring breeze and rain, but it was not excessive. "Take care, Miss Qing Ying." He smiled and cupped his hands. Qing Ying nodded and said, "Child, if you have a chance to see Formation Emperor Lu, please say hello to him for me." Lin Sun nodded and agreed. On this day, Zhong Qiu opened a starry sky shifting formation and sent Lin Sun, Xia Ji and Golden Yellow away. This day was the 12th day after the end of Nirvana Heaven. The news that Lin Sun had become an emperor and killed a group of emperors was still fermenting and spreading on the starry sky ancient road. Boom! A terrifying rain of space-time roiled within a spatial passageway, and it emanated rumbling that sounded like thunderclaps. Lin Sun and Xia Ji walked side by side, with Golden Yellow on their side. Together, they rushed to the front of the tunnel. What they saw in front of them was all twisted and gorgeous time, which was magnificent. This was a tunnel from the dark world to the starry sky ancient road. The place it led to was the Brahman Earth world in the Wise King Star area. According to Zhong Qiu, after entering the Brahman Earth world, one could cross the starry sky in the shortest time and reach the mysterious mountain, where the Xian family was located. The mysterious mountain was an almost unknown secret world. It was comparable to a big world. It was the ancestral land of the Xian family, an ancient emperor family. It had been monopolized by the Xian family since ancient times.